And away we go. Let's
Woohoo.
let everybody come in.
You're coming in so
Whee!
fast.
I know, right? I like how I'm a dork that it just like counts down really fast. And what I'm going to do now is the super fancy disable the waiting room. Because there's a way to do that.
Oh, there's a way to do that? That's amazing.
Yes.
Tell us where you're from, everybody, and what time.
Yeah, hop on the chat.
Where in the world are you?
Now, I thought I could disable the waiting room, but it's not letting me. Huh. Weird. Oh, well, Zoom. Oh, this says I did. Hello. Zoom has its own agenda tonight. I should have made a little like offering to the Zoom gremlins tonight.
It's all right. I'm managing the slides. We're all good.
All right. Bobby's like, I'm in charge of the slides because like the internet doesn't want to work and Zoom's like, ha.
Oh, New Jersey.
Oh, look at all these cool places.
Model.
Love it. Virginia, me too. Virginia in the house. Squim, all the way on the other side. Matawan, my old hometown.
Canada.
Yay, Canada. Illinois, 6 p.m.
Colorado, South Carolina, New York.
I love it.
Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia. Jinx.
A lot of Jersey in the house.
I know, right?
Jersey, what's up?
Jersey's like, we need some power patterns. Yo. That's New Jersey. So I can say that. I can say all that. It's very fun.
Okay, another Canada, Winnipeg. Nice. Texas.
Oh, Winnipeg. Yay. Hello. I love it. We've got like all of the US covered. Like, look at all these different places.
Wow.
That's really cool.
San Francisco.
I think
what's up,
I think we should just like invite ourselves to some people's houses. Like there's some locations here. I'm like, I want to go visit.
I definitely want to visit San Francisco.
Oh, San Francisco's so nice. They're all so nice. We're lucky.
North Carolina.
I love it. So fun. Very cool. We're just going to give everyone another moment before we get in. You probably got the whole "this is being recorded" thing from Zoom. Australia. What time is it in Australia, Wendy?
Wait, is that Wagga?
Yep.
Is that a place?
It's the morning. Yeah, but how early in the morning? Hopefully a civilized time. Ooh, Colorado would be beautiful.
Oh, 9 a.m.
9 a.m.
Super civilized.
Are you drinking coffee? Right, I'd be drinking. 9 a.m. would still be coffee hour. It is 7 p.m. here. It is not coffee hour.
No coffee.
The last thing anyone needs is me drinking coffee this time of day. Oh, yeah, I'm going to get my water. Don't start without me. Thank you for the reminder. I'm like, oh, yeah, I have water.
I know, Marty. Oh, my God. Are you guys okay? Northwest Vermont, where everything is flooding.
Wine hour.
So is
upstate, I saw those pictures.
Upstate New York, too.
Yes. Where I used to live in upstate New York had big floods sometimes, and it was just scary.
I was just
be safe, everyone.
Right before this, I didn't even realize.
Yeah.
Wine hour, Carol. Yes, it is wine hour in Eastern.
Oh, good. I'm glad you're high and dry.
Well, so Southern Vermont's getting hammered. Yikes.
Well, I think we're going to start to get rolling. Get you going. What we're going to do, we have a lot. I told Bobby that this webinar had to be like, if you ever watched Gilbert and Sullivan, this is ratting myself out how much of a dork I am. How they have like the patter songs, like Modern Major General. There are going to be parts where we're going to be like powering through, like it's an old Gilbert and Sullivan song.
Say it.
I am the very model of a Modern Major General. Like that song.
I can't believe you can say that. I know the song, but I can't believe you can say that.
Yeah, it even goes faster.
I know.
Right? We're not going that fast, but we're going to be powering through. We are going to ask for streaming ease, that you turn off your videos and keep yourself muted until the end when we do Q&A. And we'll talk more about the Q&A stuff later on as well, because that just makes the streaming really good. And one of the things about this webinar is it is video heavy, meaning you're going to see lots of demos, which is, I think, very helpful for those of us that are visual learners, shall we say, right? And so welcome. We'll officially get started now. Welcome to Power Patterns for Peak Performance, which I guess fits with the Gilbert and Sullivan, because can you say that 10 times fast? Probably not. And the reason we call it power patterns will be more clear later on, but it's basically taking what we've learned about, like, you know, my background as dog trainer, operant conditioning, Bobby's background in behavior work and a dog trainer, and then hooking up with our brain camp crew, Dr. Murphy, who dives deep into the neurobiology, putting all of that together. We've kind of taken pattern games into the performance ring, into the dog sports ring, and worked on a lot of things that really help the dogs. And that's everything from like foundation through problem solving to doing better in the performance ring, because no one's sad when you do better. I mean, I don't know anyone who's like, that's good enough, right? Everyone's like, yeah, we can do better. So we're going to present some ideas that are a little outside the box today, but that's what makes it fun. And so because some of it might be new and different, you might have questions. I have questions, right? You might have questions. I might ask you questions. So put your questions in the chat box, which I'm on a laptop and it is the center bottom of my screen. And just pop them in there. And if we can catch them in flow, we will. Otherwise, we will go back at the end of a section or at the very end and do a Q&A. We do have a lot of your questions from the registration form already covered. So we'll be able to hit on that. If you put a question in the chat, because, you know, you reach a certain age, Bobby has not reached that age, but I have. You'll read a brilliant question and not remember at all what the context is. So if you also want to make a little note about like where we are in the webinar, that will help your question, right? Because they'll be like, oh yeah, then we'll have a much easier answer other than being like, wow, my brain doesn't work so well anymore. I also, before we get started with introductions, I need to give a massive thank you to the people who so willingly were like, yeah, we'll try this with our dogs. This has never been done before. This is crazy. Sure, why not, right? And thank you, double thanks to those people for sharing their videos with us, because that enables us to learn from your dogs and from you and to share it with everybody else. And I'm really loving what we're getting from the dogs. My dogs, your dogs, really cool stuff. So with that in mind, I'll do a quick introduction of me and Miss Bobby. Bobby is in charge of the slides and the tech, so I can't mess it up. And she did it. She made it look, beyond being brilliant, she made it look beautiful. So if you're like, wow, that looks beautiful, that's Bobby. That's not me. Right? Giving credit. So I'm Tracy. Hello. I do agility and flyball, and I love to geek out on the behavior side of things, not just the handling and like training the skill, but like the behavior, because that's what makes or breaks us, right? And Bobby, who I've known for almost 25 years, I think. Wow, she is not just an agility competitor, but she's also a certified dog behavior counselor, certified pet dog trainer, knowledge assessed, which means she actually got tested on knowing all this stuff. Director of Education and Behavior Vets. She's on the faculty of Catch and Agility U, and is just coming off the Rockstar Resilience Rainbow Tour, which went around a good chunk of North America, spreading a lot of training and neurobiology, and it was amazing. All right. So with that in mind, that is us. I'm going to turn it over to Bobby to start jumping us into the science stuff.
Okay. Thanks, Tracy. So what is resilience? You guys, this is a quick overview for anyone who's joined us before, and for anyone who has never watched one of our webinars, at Brain Camp webinars, or come to our camps or in-person camps. Might be new information. So resilience is the ability to adapt successfully or recover quickly from a stressful situation, events, and conditions. It depends on the stressor. So it could be, if you're thinking about dog sports, and agility is my jam. So it could be the judge. It could be walking into the trial environment. It could be, excuse me, the barking dog that's in line to go after you. It could be a number of things. It could be the heat. I know my dog really struggles with the heat. The storms that have been coming through, like every late afternoon on a weekend. And it's dynamic, meaning there are days that neurobiologically you're going to be more resilient to stressors, meaning the ability to resist the negative effects of stressors, or even just bounce back from stressful events. And then there's going to be days that it's harder for you because maybe you're sleep deprived, or you're not feeling well, or you're hormonal, or you're tired because you've had a lot at work that's been going on, a major deadline. I know when I was on tour for 4 weeks, every weekend we were doing seminars. It was absolutely impacting. By the end of week 4, I was so exhausted that I needed several days to recover from that and not work and not do anything. Because again, resilience is dynamic. But at the beginning of the tour, I had like all this energy, and stressful events were not impacting me in the way that they were towards the end. So let's talk really quickly about the biology of resilience. It relies on effective biological responses to environmental changes. So those are the active mechanisms in the brain, and that's really looking at what's happening out there when we're looking at environmental changes. And then it's also about the resistance to the negative effects of stress, and those are the passive mechanisms. So for example, I have been married or with my husband now for 11 years. And the way that things might have stressed me at the beginning of our relationship, they just roll off my back. And yes, our communication is better. Yes, we know each other better in a marriage together, but also I have been consciously doing work to improve my own resilience to stressors. And if you want to learn more about resilience and how to do that work, because right now in this webinar, we're focusing on one little piece of all of that. But if you want to learn more about that, we have a number of webinars that we have done over the course of the past year, and we'll talk about how to access them at the end of this webinar. Stress. Let's talk about the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So that's this bit right here. So Tracy, just let me know, can you see my little mouse going back and forth?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. So this is the connection. If you think about what's happening in the body, the little hypothalamus in the brain, connecting to the pituitary gland, connecting to the adrenal glands. All of this is happening whenever there's a stressful event or the body's responding to a stressful event. It is a physiological as well as a behavioral response to adversity. It's essential to survive and thrive, as well as excitement can be a form of stress. So going to a party, like you're getting excited for a party that you might be going to, or a family reunion, or something that's coming down the line that you might be pumped to do, that is a form of stress. So we're not talking about stress necessarily as a bad thing out there in the world. We're talking about the way that the body responds to events in the environment. It's the way that the body responds physiologically as well as neurobiologically. And so the HPA axis, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, is what controls or what responds to those stressors in the environment and gets the body going and getting ready to respond to that stressor. So it controls reactions, it regulates digestion, the immune system, mood, emotion, sexuality, and so forth. So you're going to hear us talk a little bit about the HPA axis here and there, and power patterns is going to be one way to help manage all of that, because at the end of the day, even if your dog loves the sport that they do, it is a stressful event. Remember, excitement also is a stressful event. We're talking about the activation of the nervous system. So the HPA axis is dynamic, like I was saying. It's activated whenever extra energy and focus is required. Like right now, because I'm giving this presentation to you and I can feel myself getting hotter, I'm about to take this off. It's requiring focus and extra energy from my brain. So it is now activated, and I'm excited to be here with you. And I'm not nervous or anything, but there's a physiological process that's happening right now. It can be associated with joy, excitement, anticipation, reduced familiarity, like novelty, like going on a vacation. I'm super excited. I went to Scotland last year. I was so excited to be there. And my HPA axis was activated because everything was novel, everything was new, everything was exciting. So also during this process, there's a lot of changes. There's hormonal, inflammatory, immune, motor, increased oxygenation, release of glucose, and internal analgesia, because the body is preparing for whatever event is going on out there in the world. And the body needs more energy, the muscles need more glucose, more oxygen. And it's energetically expensive, which is why if your HPA axis is constantly activated or staying at an activated level, that kind of chronic activation can actually be unhealthy over time. Long-term consequences with reduced fitness. So again, that can happen if it's elevated over and over or maintains an elevated state. It doesn't come back down. Naturally, or kind of the natural way, organic way of doing things is you want to see the HPA axis get activated, but then be able to come back down to baseline, get activated, come back down to baseline. And this is what I was saying, needs to return to baseline. So again, we have other webinars where we go deeper into this conversation. We'll share about how to access those webinars at the end. Before we go on, I want to talk about the Yerkes-Dodson law, the YD curve. This might look like a very familiar graphic to some of you guys who've come back, our veteran Brain Camp crew folks. We're going to talk a bit about surfing the YD curve is what we like to say. So think about it this way. Zone 1, and this is about arousal and performance. So the more aroused a dog becomes, the weaker the performance becomes. So look at the graph here, the X and Y axis. So the strongest point is about midway, right? So zone 1 is sleep, calm, relaxed. That's kind of like my puppy right now. He's chewing his bully stick and he's laying down beside me and he's quiet. And then I have my other dog over there who's sleeping. Then zone 2 might be engaged and focused. And that's kind of like, if you think about it, you get your dog out of the car when you're at a trial and you start walking closer to the building. They've warmed up, they've peed, they've pooped, and you can kind of see a shift as you come into the building, especially a dog who's trialed before a number of times, where they start to become more engaged with you. Then you have peak performance, and this is the optimal place that you really want your dog to be. And it's different for every dog, but they have this sort of peak performance of where they're kind of like the sports psychology concept is called being in the zone. And then if the arousal keeps going higher, you're going to see them fall into zone 3, where there might be some frustration, increased anxiety, distraction, lax focus. I know for my dog Topper, this is where we've ended up quite a bit when we've done our work together. And then I've over the last couple of years, I've gotten him to a point where he could operate in peak performance. And then zone 4, so you see again, as the arousal keeps increasing, the performance starts to go down. You're now in overwhelmed or shut down. And this was like the quick explanation. But again, we have webinars that go deeper into this. We wanted to give you this overview. So Tracy, come on in. And we wanted to give you this overview to get you ready for where we're going to go.
I'm coming in. I'm just going to add my camera somehow. Give me a moment to pretend I know how to use Zoom.
You've only done it thousands of times. All right.
It's only my 3-year anniversary with Zoom or whatever that meme that showed up in my Facebook memories today. So I'm going to take you on the next of our little bit of our dive into things you need to know before we start the patterns. And the first one is multisensory integration. And basically multisensory integration is what it sounds like if you break it up. It's how the dog's brain gathers, processes, prioritize information. And basically different channels of sensory information are being input into the brain, and the brain's job is to form some type of coherent representation of what's going on in the environment. And this is when all the different sensory modalities interact. And so that sounds all well and good, but if you think about sport dogs, through everything that is bombarding them, right? The environment, the emotion, the emotional state, the attentional state, past experience, they have to select the correct information to attend to. And that's kind of one of the bedrock elements of what we're going for. So if you want to go to the next slide, Bobby, it gives us a visual of all the things that are bombarding the dog. And the only thing that I have not put in here is me, because while my dog is on the teeter, she's got vision, taste, touch, pain, sound, smell, physiology like heart rate and breathing and her movement. And on top of all of that, she's got to process some crazy lunatic me running, yelling, target, 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 or whatever the next cue is. And so multisensory integration is how the brain deals with the perception and the prioritization of everything that is bombarding them. And it is individual, which is why even litter mates can have entirely different responses behaviorally or physiologically to what's going on in the environment. So we are taking that into account with these power patterns so that we can really help the dog know how to pluck out the information that we would like them to pluck out, right? These power patterns help because it helps them select the information that we want. So that brings us to attentional states. And when you hear attention, you probably think engagement, right? Like a dog paying attention, but that's not what I mean. I'm talking about attentional states, which is not engagement. It's a brain function that's responsible for how the brain processes information from the environment. And it kind of goes hand in hand with multisensory integration. So even though we present these things linearly, one after the other, that is not how it works. It works like a stew, right? For lack of a better word. Everything is mixed together. So in the attentional state, the normal state of everyday living is a divided attentional state. And what a divided attentional state does is it's the brain processing all of the things that it's bombarding, not necessarily selecting, just kind of being aware of everything that's going on. So if you want to go to the next slide, Bobby, that would be awesome. So you'll see our divided attentional state. Nacho singing the song of his people for the divided attentional state. This is like the normal way, right? And the problem with the divided attentional state is that the brain might be processing things that we would not like the brain to prioritize. And so a lot of the issues that I see in sport training is that the dog is in a divided attentional state. We would like them to go get the ball from the box. We would like them to weave the poles. And their brain is like, hey, there's like another dog over there. Or the brain's like, look at that guy. Or the brain's like, wow, right? Could be any number of those things. So we need to start thinking about the next attentional state, if you want to go to the next slide, which is the selective attentional state. Look at that cute whippet. Let's just take a moment. And the selective attentional state is when the dog, they're processing all this information, their brain is able to select and prioritize certain information, right? It's exactly what it sounds like. And it's what we want as the first step to getting really amazing success in the ring. So we're going to be focusing a lot on selective attentional state tonight. Selective attentional state is really only the middle ground for extreme success in sports. So if you want to go to the next slide, you will see that there's something called the sustained attentional state. And that's what Bobby said about like being in the zone. And the thing with the sustained attentional state is you can't just magically appear in the sustained attentional state. The more that I watch sport dogs, the more I realize that we have to take them from divided to selective to sustained. Because if they're not in selective and they're divided, sustained attentional state is nearly impossible to get. So our main focus tonight is going to be getting them from the divided attentional state to the sustained attentional state. One note from Dr. Murphy, the veterinary neuroscientist, is for all of you with young dogs, the way the brain develops, the part of the brain in the front that deals with that sustained in the zone, intense focus, that part of the brain kind of develops last. So if you've got like a 1-year-old dog that's full on adolescent and you just can't get that sustained attentional state, it's because you can't, because the brain's not developed. So those of us with the youngsters, I have an 11-month-old and a 7-month-old puppy, we have to be chill. We're going to focus on it and get the skills going and rehearse it, but we have to let them grow up. And the other thing about the sustained attentional state is that it is short-lived, which is great for dog sports, right? It's not a 4-hour state. It's a short-lived blast, right? So like chasing a squirrel, that's a sustained attentional state. An agility run, fly ball run, even obedience, right? There's moments of sustained and obedience, but it's a much longer go rounds. So there'll be moments where the dog is not in sustained attentional state. It's really, really cool if the dog can get themselves into that sustained attentional state. We won't be sad. But most of our work is going to be helping them get into those states. And tonight is going to be really focused on going from divided to selective. One note is that all of this must be rehearsed. You can't just go to the trial and do it. You need to teach it to the dog and rehearse it so that you are able to get that in the moment instead of just throwing them into the deep end. So if you see us showing you a lot of foundation and at-home versions, it's because of the rehearsal aspect of it. All right, so I'm going to turn it back over to Bobby for the next group of fun. Oh, see, there's our picture. Sorry, my little arrow didn't show up. Oh, is the arrow loading? There, that's our work for tonight. Divided to selective in that pretty color too. All right, it's all yours, Bobby.
Hold on. Hello. All right, can you see me? Sorry, I didn't know that you didn't say next slide. So pattern games, that's how we're going to get there. Pattern games, the foundation. First, for those of you who are collecting continuing education units for whatever organization you're part of, if you're a professional trainer or behavior consultant, our secret word is hot sauce, because it's hot sauce's birthday this month. Right, Tracy?
Hot sauce! Hot sauce Marie, happy birthday.
And we'll send out a form at the end of this webinar in the email when you get the recording link. We'll send out a form to fill out for those of you who are collecting continuing education units. Okay. So pattern games to promote peak performance. Oh my gosh, so many P's. So I want to say first, Leslie McDevitt, thank you so much for introducing this concept to the performance world and creating a number of games to implement it. We are only able to look at how to get creative because she has like a whole entire program dedicated to helping dogs with predictability and patterns in a variety of situations, whether it's dog sports or behavior modification, the pet world, whatever you're working on. The games that we're going to focus on in this particular webinar and then how we build upon them are the up and down game, the 1, 2, 3 game, the Super Bowls game, and then the back and forth game is something that Tracy likes to do. And I don't recall exactly what Leslie calls a similar game. The other thing is, if you are interested in learning more about pattern games in general, like I said, there's so many of them, you can go to Friends of Controlled Unleashed. That's Leslie McDevitt's Facebook page. She has a whole program there, a very supportive community, and also has an incredible book called Controlled Unleashed, From Reactive to Relaxed. So pattern games are designed to do a couple different things. They create a strong reinforcement history for a particular behavior or series of behaviors, so building value and understanding. They also create predictability in environments that can feel unpredictable, thereby helping to reduce anxiety, manage arousal, help build engagement, focus, all of those things. And that's where pattern games or patterns in predictability help build resilience and also help surf that YD curve, like that arousal where the dog, and it's not about having the dog not be aroused, they're going to be aroused, they're going to go there. And it's about how to help them when they are there, or how to help them get to optimal performance, whatever that might look like for that particular dog. Okay. So the first one is the up and down game. And I want to say this really quickly before we get into the game. There's a lot of folks that like to teach Watch Me, and I'm not a fan of teaching Watch Me. I think there's a time and place for that, but this is not the place, because that requires the dog to focus on their handler or their person, but it doesn't actually give us any information about potentially physiologically where they might be, because we're not giving them space to just behave in a particular way. So this game I like more because it does several things. It allows the dog to engage with whatever is going on in the environment and come back to you when they're ready. There's also this this rhythmic, like vestibular movement of up, down. And there's science to tell us, similar to just how you might rock a baby when you're trying to calm them down, there's science that tells us that that rocking up and down motion helps to change their brain waves so that it gets them into a calmer state of mind. Not chill, but just in a place where they can be in a better state in terms of optimal performance versus becoming so aroused that they're kind of, shutting down or distracted in zone 3 or 4. The other thing that's going on is there's an opportunity for co-regulation between you and the dog. And I have found, and I think Tracy would agree with this, especially with our sports dogs, they want to move. They want to move. And all these pattern games give them tools to cope with what's going on in the environment and manage arousal while being in motion. So we'll just play out the video. Now, there isn't any sound in this 3 sets of video because I want to talk through it. So what you're going to see here is that I'm not asking him to do anything. I'm just placing a treat on the ground. And when he looks up at me, I place another one on the ground. And that's all I'm doing. Now, and I didn't cue him to look at me, right? He took a moment there to sniff to see if there were more treats. That's fine. If he sits, that's fine. If he lays down, that's fine. If he stands, that's fine. It doesn't matter. All he has to do is look at me. And I'm not waiting for him to look up at my eyes. I'm just waiting for him to look in my general direction. It could be my knees. It could be my hands. It doesn't matter. Okay, this next game is the Super Bowls game. I love this game for so many different reasons. Let me play it and then I'll tell you why I love the game. So I have 2 bowls here. They're visual targets. So it starts like the up and down game, up and down, up and down. And I'm just saying, hey, buddy, this is the up and down game, but with a visual target, a bowl. And then I move to the other bowl and do the same thing to say it's the same thing, but we're using bowls now. And then at one point, here it is, I start moving in between the bowls. So the moment he looks at me, I move to the next bowl, give him a treat. Looks at me, move to the next bowl, give him a treat. Looks at me, move to the next bowl, give him a treat. And what's happening here is that the bowls act like visual targets. And for a lot of dogs that are hyper vigilant, are really struggling in the environment, are, super aroused, having visual targets can really help them because it gives them something to focus on in addition to doing the pattern where that's this predictable experience happening. And the third game is the 1, 2, 3 game. And what I'm doing here is I'm saying 3, and then I'm giving him a treat. 3, I'm giving him a treat. I'm back chaining. So 3 predicts treat, 3 predicts treat. Right here, I start to say 2, 3, 2, 3. And then on 3, he gets a treat, 2, 3, gets a treat. And now I start the count 1, 2, 3, he gets the treat, 1, 2, 3, and I give him the treat. 1, 2, 3, and I start to move with doing the count. 1, 2, 3, he gets the treat. And just to stay in the frame of the camera, I'm not walking very far, but it's 1, 2, 3 gets the treat, 1, 2, 3 gets the treat. Now, if at any point I lost his attention, I would just pause the count and wait till he comes back to me. 1, 2, 3 gets the treat. Now, these are the foundation games. We're going to tell you how you can use them and build it to the point that you're using them at competitions. So right there, I think it dropped on his head, the treat. 1, 2, 3, gets the treat. Tracy, I can't believe how big he is. Like I'm looking at this video. I just did this the other day. 1, 2, they're so big. Right there, he barked at something. 1, 2, 3, my neighbor's dog barked. I just waited till he came back. 1, 2, 3. Great. Okay. Tracy, hop on real quick. I want you to talk about the back and forth game. We can be on together.
Yes. Hello. So the back and forth game.
Looks like you're going bowling.
Here, stop the video for 1 second.
Okay.
And so the way that I do the back and forth is I start the game. A lot of people want to wait for the dog to offer engagement, but they may not be able to. So I always start the game. And it's part of that communication of saying to the dog, how are you feeling? Like the Lizzo song, baby, how you feeling? So I begin, I'll show the dog the treat, and then I'll kind of toss it to one side. So like if it's in my left hand, I'll toss it to my left. And I say get it, but you don't have to, right? As long as the treat gets tossed. Any re-engagement from the dog gets me to toss the treat with my right hand off to the right. So the dog is going back and forth, right? And a pattern is born. And so basically what I'm doing is I'm sending the dog back into the world with a little bit of exploration, a little bit of olfaction. And all of these games develop this really cool framework for assessing and self-regulation and arousal management, as you'll see later. Before we go too much more into the videos, you'll also see me use a leash a lot, especially when I'm training at home, because I don't want the leash to be a trigger of like more arousal, like, oh my God, this is for real. So I'm constantly using a leash at home. Plus it's good for my mechanics because I have not yet grown the third arm. And it's important that I know, you'll see with the puppy that I'm like, oh, the leash, what a pain. Right, so go ahead and play that video. I'll narrate a little bit. So here is Contraband. He was, I don't know, maybe 18 months at the time. So I start off by just throwing the thing back and forth, any engagement. I say get it and throw it. And notice how I'm not cueing it. He can look at my hands. He can look at the cookies. He can look at my face. It doesn't matter. So here's my little jitterbug, who's about 6 months old at the time. There's the leash, because, you know, puppies. Now on this back and forth game, you can be moving as well. So it's not necessarily stationary for the human. I started standing still. Oh, and then I drop the leash. And then I'm like, now what do I do? Like a dog trainer. So I just carry on because it's not his fault. And at the end, I kind of gather it up. So you can see how quickly this puppy was like, yeah, I got this. And if he and Drazen look alike, it's because they're litter mates. Now in the sport world, I understand that not every dog in every environment can eat food. We will talk about that later. So I do pattern games with toys. So here's Mr. Contraband early in life doing the back and forth pattern game with Frisbees. And the way that works is you just have to be able to like get them to let it go. And so he was moving back and forth, that same back and forth pattern, but I had a disc in each hand. So his earliest introductions into harder environments involved discs, one in each hand, because that was the way I could get the pattern going as I built the food, right? So I encourage you guys to, yes, use food, but also don't fight with a dog about food. You can use toys, right? You can get really creative in what you do as long as it is a pattern, right? Back and forth in this case. And you can see the dogs bouncing back and forth. All right. So now I'll turn it back over to Bobby. Carrying on.
Cool. All right. Tracy, can you jump in and answer some of the questions? I realized I can't answer them on the fly as we're going because it stops the video when I do that. So Tracy will answer most of the questions. I can answer them when we have a static slide. Okay. So now we're taking all these pattern games, these foundation games. And again, there's so many games out there, whether you're using Leslie McDevitt's games, or you've come up with other ways to create a pattern experience for your dog. There's a lot of other great instructors and trainers out there that have created this these pattern experiences, and you have to bring it into the world, right? So it's about folding in the challenges. And in these next few videos, we're going to show you how we start to bring them into the world, into different situations, so that you're getting the dog ready. All of these pattern games, yes, we are training a skill. There is a transactional process, that experience that's happening. We are operating in the operant model, and there is a neurobiological process that's happening at the same time. So you have to systematically build the experience for the dog. So now in this video, I'm going to play it and then mute it so that it's not too, I can talk over it. I just finished up doing the 1, 2, 3 game with him here. And then I moved to the up and down game. Now this is just last week. I did this with Drazen. He is, God, Tracy, is he almost there? 6.5 months old now. And he's in agility class, right? And he just decided a couple weeks ago that agility is awesome. He is a herding dog, 2 different herding breeds. And so here I am working with him with a dog that's working in the ring, and we're working on the up and down game. And so here he is. He looks at the dog. I wait for him. And you can see the bot, he gets a little excited when they come close to the tunnel. Wow, oh my God, they ran through the tunnel. And I don't pull him back. When he comes back to me, I just start with the up and down aim. Now, mind you, he's been playing this game since he was a baby. If I had started this game maybe a week ago and then decided to do this, he could not have stood so close to the ring and be able to handle this. I might have started him, say, like 20 feet back. There he goes, little monkey. Okay, and now in this next video, I'm just going to mute it as we talk. You can even play these games in flow. So this is a student of mine that I worked with last year. She has a super fast Sheltie, really great handler. And she's been working on her arousal management. And so one of the things that she uses to manage her arousal in the middle of a turn is the up and down game. So it's a great way to get feedback from the instructor while keeping the dogs, remember, we're surfing that YD curve. So she doesn't get frustrated. She doesn't get super aroused. This dog has had a history of getting so aroused that she would then vomit. So the up and down game is one really great example of how in the middle of a run or right before a run or afterwards, you can help manage that arousal because there's things going on neurobiologically for the dog that help them surf that YD curve. I also want to point out that we're doing more than just the up and down game. And she played this game, not just in the ring, she had played it a lot at home in the backyard in different scenarios. Okay. Now, this is another student of mine playing the Super Bowls game in class. All right. So I'm going to mute this as I talk about what's happening here. So these people behind the gate, they're a challenge. They're his aunties. He loves them. And because he loves them so much, he's had a history of leaving the mama and running through the gate to visit them. He can fit in these little holes because he's a tiny little thing. Even he just has a lot of hair. So week 1, she practiced daily for about 2 minutes in the home and around her property and in the training facility, but no other people or dogs around. Week 2, she practiced in class, but on the opposite side of the building. So the people were about 40, 50 feet away. And then through weeks 3 and 5, we moved closer and closer and closer until she was able to do it, so close. Like, look at this person standing right there. And I think she even walks by at one point, so close to the people, right? This person is walking by. And look at his attention the entire time. So we've systematically, over the course of a month, have gotten him to the point, because what used to happen is he would just be at the end of his leash lunging to say hello to everybody. And the moment the leash would come off, he would just take off to go visit people. And this is how we started building engagement with this particular dog. Superstar. And at no point, if he looks away and looks at the people, at no point is his mama cueing him to come back. She's just waiting to let him engage when he's ready. So this is the same dog. And this is, again, weeks to building up to this point. So here he is practicing, and you can kind of hear, I don't know if you can hear, it's pretty loud. There's a dog running in the ring, and she's practicing the 1, 2, 3 game. And she's not going that close to the person. You see there's a dog and a person right here, and she's just doing the count of 1, 2, 3, and there's a dog running in here. She goes about halfway there. She's making sure she's in between the other dogs and the people. And there, at one point, he does get a little distracted, comes right back to the game. 1, 2, 3. She just goes halfway down and doing the count. And we took our time to get to this place. Good boy. And he is given opportunities to visit on cue. Okay, Tracy, come on in.
Coming in. What about the dog that won't take his eyes off the handler? That's where you could do the back and forth, because that'll take their eyes off of you, right? Just answering a real quick question in the chat.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
Bobby's like, what are you talking about?
What's happening? That slide is not in here.
Poor Bobby. And is the count out loud so the dog
Yes.
can predict? Yes.
That's part of the prediction.
Right.
Yes.
And so here's a next step of the back and forth game. And it's me kind of in my garage with some random cooler open with nothing in it. So basically I'm introducing a neutral distraction in the environment to help develop the framework further, which says to the dog, yes, you may assess things in the environment, you may self-regulate, you may return engagement back to me. And we started with something neutral and not scary because we want the framework to be comfortable. We want these games to be neutral. Bobby calls it neutralizing them. Because if we only play these games in arousing situations or worrisome situations, then we will accidentally get more arousal and more worry every time we play these games. So we do not want to do that. So we play these games mostly in these neutral, happy, non-arousing, non-scary situations. So if you want to go ahead and play the video, it looks exactly what I did with Contraband earlier, which is I show him a cookie, I say, get it. I'm walking back and forth, strolling, walking back and forth. He's like, oh, a cooler returns engagement to me. Right. So any engagement with me, I throw another cookie and he's like, what's that? I don't think he'd seen it. So I just wait, didn't call him. He re-engages, throw the cookie. I smile because he's cute, because he is. And now he's able to engage much more quickly. He's like, no, I got to really check this out. Okay, I'm fine now. And basically we're saying to the dog, all right, you are going to learn how to assess the distraction in the environment, self-regulate, not be concerned about any of this. And we use this framework in a variety of situations to help the dog assess, self-regulate, and deal with the environments that we put them in. Because in dog sports, we have this expectation of bringing the dog into a new environment and getting immediate engagement and attention and perfection like it's our living room. And the reality is we need to teach that. Right. So by presenting the distraction, I'm beginning to teach him the difference between the divided attentional state and then shifting his attention into that selective state where he can select attention engagement with me. Right. And I say that like it's operant, but I also understand that it's physiological. Right. So all these things are happening. And so another real world moment that actually happened pretty recently. I do Zoom classes with people across the country to help train their puppies. So this happened in a Zoom class last week, I think, and this dog's out in Utah. It's an adolescent dog that is also in season. So adolescent, which is hard, and hormonal, which is hard. I know you can all relate. And so we were trying to do tunnels to wings, right? But something happened right before her turn. It was around the 4th of July. So we think there was a loud boom, like a firework, and the dog was afraid, simply afraid, right? Now, the background to this is these dogs, like Kathy was asking about Bazinga in the chat, these dogs have been learning this back and forth game since like day 2 of puppy class, right? Week 2, we started this class. So they've got this rehearsal under their belt for months. And so when it was her turn to do the thing, the dog was at the fence, really upset, really worried. So we immediately went into the back and forth game. And you'll see how quickly the dog was able to come back to work. So this one does have sound, so I'm going to shut my mouth so you can hear the conversation with me and the handler. And so if you want to go ahead and hit play, that way we can show them how this went in the real world.
Let me know if you
It
can.
might be done. We'll see.
Can you hear it?
What happened? Or she? Yeah.
No, I think she heard something. I don't know what she heard.
Is she eating cookies? Will she eat?
I don't know.
Ask her to eat a cookie. Let's see if she'll eat. It's a great opportunity to work on, oh shit, something weird happened in the environment. So now do a little bit of that back and forth resilience game.
Yeah.
Where you're just gonna toss the cookies back and forth. She gets the cookie, she looks at you, you toss the next one. And then if she can do that, we will go to Toy Toys.
Oh, where'd the other cookie go? There we go.
There it is. So let her look at you and then watch the dog's body language.
Yay.
Yay. Do maybe 2 more of those. Yay. And then we'll see if she wants to play with tail coming up. Nice. head coming up,
Send her through the tunnel, just any random tunnel, and then give her a twist.
adding movement.
Yeah, baby
Oh,
girl.
that was so great.
There we go.
Yeah.
Do one more.
Good girl.
Do one more tunnel. Ready? There you go.
Good.
So
Yeah,
that
I
right
think you
there.
might be okay.
Wow.
Isn't that cool? That's why I'm like, we got to use this. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Caper. Vicky's the mama. And so I timed it on the video and it was less than 20 seconds that the dog went from being really upset to the dog being like, oh, I'm fine. So that's why I was saying, watch your body language. You can see the tail coming up, the head's coming up. And then I just guessed, I was like, well, let's see if she wants to do a tunnel play with the toy. And the dog was like, heck yeah, I do. And if you notice, we brought the dog back into that happy zone, not with coercion or forcing or pressure, but by just going back to the physiology. So I hypothesize as a dog trainer that these games, these foundation pattern games and the power patterns actually are something of a physiological cue to the dog's body and their internal state to begin returning to baseline allostasis, to begin going to that optimal state and arouse and deal with their own arousal management. Now, if anyone wants to fund a study, we will find a scientist to do it. But like watching the dogs observationally, we see this over and over and over. So this is just a really cool video to see how quickly we can change the dog's internal state. It's very cool. Very cool. All right, we can move
And
on.
I want to add, and at no point were you trying to address the issue at hand. Like at no point were you
Right.
like, the gunshot going off is what we have to address.
Right. No, because it's not about the noise. It's about let's help the dog. And so I didn't go closer to where the noise was. I wasn't like, suck it up, you wimp. No, absolutely not. I was just like, how can we help this dog in this moment? What's in the toolbox? Well, that resilience game is in the toolbox. And it was just an outstanding example of how quickly things can turn around. It was really cool to have on video.
All right, this is you now for a bit. So I'm gonna
All right.
turn my camera on.
Power patterns. Now that we've done like the foundation and how you can work the foundation up into bigger pieces, Bobby describes the power patterns like lightning in a bottle, which is what this picture is, which I really like because it is really exciting. And what I encourage you guys to do with the power patterns is also get creative for yourself, because you can kind of develop your own set of power patterns that can help your dog or revise them, because the dog's body language and communication and behavior and physiology will tell you if you're going the right direction or not, which is really, really cool. So if you want to go to that next slide, we're going to start getting into the nitty gritty of the power patterns. So the first thing I wanted you guys to know is we're bridging the gap now from the regular pattern games into these power patterns, which we haven't told you what they are yet, but we're getting there. So the first question I get from people is, when is your dog ready for power patterns? So I outlined some things that I think will help you know when your dog is ready for the next step on all of this. So like people are like, how do you know if it's working? When do you go to the next step? What does it look like when the dog's physiology is where you want it? Because we can only observe in the moment. We have no electrodes, right? We don't know like what's going on in their blood or brain. So the first thing is low latency, which is how quickly they're able to re-engage, right? And so low means a short length of time. High latency is not good. High latency means, well, it's not bad, but it means it's just taking them a long time. So low latency is the first thing we think about. So if you want to go to the next thing we think about, not the video. Sorry, Bobby. There we go. The behavioral outcome. And so as dog trainers, because we all are, right? We have to ask ourselves, is it working, right? Do we have the engagement that we're working? Is the dog able to ignore whatever's happening in the environment and select us, select engaging us? And when I say select us, I just mean selective attentional state. It's not some emotional relationship thing. It's just attentional states. So if you want to go to the next one, fluency. So fluency and low latency are kind of hand in hand, meaning how well does the dog know the framework of the game, and how quickly is the dog able to offer engaging again with you, right? So I think there's one or two more on these if you want to click through them. Physiology, you can see, like you saw with Caper, you saw her tail set change, you saw her head come up, you saw the ear set change. So it's part of our job as dog trainers is the dog handlers is to know what each dog looks like. So like my Whippet's body language is very different from my Papillon's body language, right? Versus the terriers, versus the border collie mixes. So they're all incredibly different. So you have to really observe the dog and know what the physiology looks like for that dog. I think there's one more, Bobby. Or maybe there's not.
There is not.
All right. Okay, the video. The video.
Yeah.
So on this video, this is he was young at the time. I'm playing a little bit of back and forth with Contraband to get him in the selective attentional state to be able to go run some fly ball, because fly ball is super fun. And we're about 25 feet from the lane, maybe 30 feet. There's racing going on. It's noisy. There's sound on this video, but I actually turned it way down because it's real loud. The dog is wrapped to race, so he knows, right? The wraps are a cue. He's wearing his racing leash. So it's what's happening here is the back and forth game as we come into the area with the ring. So look at how quickly he can do this. All right, go ahead and play it. So I'm outside getting my cookies ready. There should be sound, but you guys just all, if you can't hear it, imagine barking, a lot of barking, because, you know, fly ball. So I walk in the room, I tell him to get it. The game has begun. Immediate re-engagement. Immediate, low latency, very fluent. There's dogs and people everywhere, tail wagging, ears up, ready to go. All right, so you can see the latency is super low. Physiology looks good based on what I know of this dog. Behavioral outcome, is it working? Is he ignoring? As we came into the room, there was a dog barking. You can see the guy in the hat in the corner of the video. There's dogs barking, there's dogs running fly ball. Is he able to ignore things in the environment and be in that selective attentional state? I'm gonna go with a yes. So that dog is ready for the power patterns. So Bobby, if you wanna go to the next slide, the Electra slide. Hello, Electra Jean. Electra wants to know, what are power patterns, right? So if you wanna go to the next one, just have to put that cute face in. She's very quizzical. So the power patterns take your pattern games basically over the top, right? They take them ringside. They take them literally into the ring in many cases, right? People ask me all the time, these are cool, but how do you bring them into the ring? Well, we have answers for you. And I call it affectionately into the hot seat, right? We're turning it up a notch in terms of the Yerkes-Dodson curve and the arousal states. So we also can use some of these power patterns to get into that optimal higher state of arousal that Bobby was talking about, and definitely getting them really being able to self-regulate those arousal states so they don't tip over into the over-aroused states. We also use them to shift attentional states while they're in the higher arousal, because often in higher arousal, we get the divided attentional state, right? Sometimes the internal arousal is what divides the attentional state. And so we are putting the dog into higher arousal and shifting attentional states, which works brilliantly for dog sports, really helps the dogs. The games are designed to be played ringside and taken into the ring, and also to train situations that might occur in the ring. So that way we can kind of cover all of our bases. And you'll see that a lot of them, I call them equations, they're going to combine the pattern games, which is why I encourage you guys to, you know, not only play these, but create your own, right? It's like Build-A-Bear. You can totally take the basic pattern games and make ones that work for your dogs, because it's an entirely individual experience, right? And the power patterns are very specific to building in sport-specific skills, scenarios, and obstacles, which you will see as we start to go through the power patterns. So if you want to go to that next one, overall, I like to think of it as a toolbox, because if I have a giant toolbox of things that I can do with the dog to help the dog and help myself in any situation, then I am prepared for whatever might happen. If I have a very limited toolbox or I'm stuck in one routine, I'm going to get bit, not by the dog, by the situation. Something is going to go wrong and I will be unable to help the dog. So like think back to Caper, the border collie, who was doing tunnels and, you know, jump wings, fun stuff. And what if we did not have that back and forth game in our toolbox? we would probably have had it, abort mission, brought the dog back inside. The dog still would have had that stressed internal state, but we had a tool in the toolbox, pulled it out, and we're immediately able to get back on track, right? So that was very helpful. So onwards to the first part of the power patterns, we use them in shaping behavior, right? And yes, I'll do click treat and all that fun stuff, but I use a lot of patterns now to shape behavior that we like to shape in dog sports, starting from puppies, going all the way up into adult dog behavior. So we're going to show you some, not all, but some of what we're doing for power patterns for shaping. So if you're not doing this, I would definitely include this even with adult dogs. So the first one up is Mr. Ramen P Noodles. Let's just have a moment because the cute factor is ridiculous. And I'm shaping him, he's really young, to go around a thing, which we use in a variety of dog sports, right? Go around a thing is common in agility, like go around an upright. We use it to some extent in fly ball to kind of help begin to shape the concept of the shape of the turn that we want. So here's a little baby puppy. I think he was like 12 or 14 weeks old. And I'm using in this game several things going on all at once. It's Super Bowls, because there's bowls happening, right? It's back and forth. So even though as the dog trainer, I think I'm operantly building the shaping of going around the upright, I'm also building in a physiological regulation during work, getting the selective attentional state that I'm going to want during work and training and competition, and getting a lot of clarity by him understanding the framework for being able to go back and forth around this. So there's a lot that's happening here. The end result is not only do I get a dog when he's older that can wrap wings, which is happy making for us all, but I have a dog that can work in challenging environments with really wonderful physiological regulation, really, really good arousal regulation, and really great at going into that selective attentional state. He's only 11 months old, so I know he does not have the sustained attentional state yet. So if you want to play that video, Bobby, it's a short little video. So I just start by doing me sitting there. It's a variation of Super Bowls. He goes back and forth between the bowls. He's still learning how to eat here. Nice little pointy nose. One bowl is upside down because it was too deep for him to get his little nose into. He's so much bigger now. Oh my gosh. So he's learning this back and forth. So I'm establishing the self-regulation and the arousal management from the get-go, right? And then once we start to get that, then I start to bring the upright in. You'll see that happening. He doesn't know how to work his feet yet. He's that young. It's so cute. Little ramen. So I'm not even saying anything. I'm just letting the sound, it's kibble, letting the sound of the tiny kibble in the bowl remind him. So once he gets that going, I just stick a wing in the middle and we pick up our little back and forth game. And he's like, oh, I go around the thing. So we get this automatic building in of not only the wrapping the wing, but also all the things that I'm going to want from him as an adult in terms of arousal management, physiological regulation, attentional state. So here's this baby puppy learning what I think of as a sports skill, but also learning a lot of other under the hood behavior. Here's a little further down the road. I'm standing up now. He's doing his back and forth Super Bowl combo around a laundry basket, which is, the logical next step in the winter when you don't feel like going outside because it's cold. And so he was learning the next step of the wrapping, going around a laundry basket. And it was so easy to teach him that because we had the pattern, right? The power pattern of up and down, back and forth, and Super Bowls all combined, right? When I'm standing, up and down comes into play. So you get all of that combined. And like now that we're teaching it this way to the dogs, the puppies in particular, I've never seen dogs learn so fast and be so happy about it, right? There's so much less frustration for dog and handler, right? So that is one little foundation power pattern. Now, the next one is an important one for dogs that struggle not with wrapping things, but might have a struggle about like eating while they're working. And of course we can flip it and have toys be part of this, but this is a puppy. I forget how old she is. She's probably like 10, 11 months old, somewhere in there, maybe a little younger. She was having a struggle because we humans, this is another Zoom class, all the good things happen on Zoom. She's having a struggle. We wanted to get her to go around this little 3-wing setup, and it's more ideal to use food because of the reward placement. So there it is from the operant perspective, right? The reinforcement strategy is a cookie because it's easier to place. You get more repetitions in, bing, bang, boom. In theory, it's a clean training session. The dog had other ideas. She was frustrated. She wanted the toy. She saw the handler put the toy on the wall. She didn't want to eat the food. We had frustration in dog and handler, right? So you'll see that in the first part of the building, in the first part of the video. Now, the skill that we wanted was easy for her, and the dog loves movement. Don't underestimate how much these sport dogs like to move. So use that in your patterns. So instead of saying we must work on the wings, I was like, let's develop the food eating as a reward strategy for this dog because we need it, right? It's so much more effective in dog sports to train when you have food as part of your reward strategy. You kind of want a huge, expansive reinforcement toolbox. So what we did, if you want to go ahead and start the video, I'll kind of narrate as we go. I think there is some sound on it, but not much. We don't have to play the whole thing because you'll get the point really quickly. Here's the beginning of it.
Do you want the sound or no?
Nah, I can just talk through it.
Okay.
And so the handler's like, all right, we're using food. And she puts the tug toy on the wall. And the puppy's like, wait, what? Watch the puppy. She's like, excuse me, ma'am, you have forgotten the most important part. So she's sitting facing it. So she does go around the thing because she likes movement. And the handler's like, here's your cookie. You were brilliant. And the puppy's like, I'm still wrapping. We're still working. I get toy. So instead of putting pressure on the puppy and saying like, you have to eat, you have to do this, right? And instead of frustrating both of them, we completely changed it up, right? Here's the handler saying, okay, fine, I'm going to get the food. And we put the food, the eating, as the behavior we were training in the middle of this power pattern. So it became go around the thing, eat the cookie, get the toy. Now watch how nicely we get everything we want. And then I'll explain what we think is going on under the hood. Go around, nice reward placement, eat the cookie. She didn't even have to swallow it. I'm like, just put it in your mouth. She took a minute for the puppy to see it. Oh, there's my cookie. As soon as she put it in her mouth, she got the toy. Took a minute to get it going. Oh, I think the handler went to a better cookie. There we go. Now we have it going. She got the cookie. As soon as she put the cookie in her mouth, she got on the toy. And you'll see the light bulb moment from the puppy. Oh, so this is what we're doing. We're eating the cookie and then playing. So it was around the thing, get the cookie to the toy. Do you see the change in the engagement level and the happiness level of dog and handler? Dog is faster. Dog is incredibly accurate on the behavior we'd like to train, which is go around the thing. Both dog and handler are far less frustrated because now they've got the reinforcement strategy going. All right. And that is so important that when we're training these dogs, that we take frustration out of the equation, because the physiology of frustration goes back to what Bobby was talking about with the HPA axis. And it does none of us any good in dog sports or life. It's a really expensive thing. It's exhausting. And you can see how we really help this puppy be able to get the behavior we wanted, go around the wings, and also the behavior of the reinforcement strategy of eat the food. All right. So she's not obsessing on the toy. Now the puppy has it. So if you want to stop the video, I know the puppy is really cute. So what I think of, that was the whole video anyway. So what I think is going on, because again, we do not have electrodes or saliva tests or blood tests for the dog, is that by taking the frustration out, by making it a pattern again, and like by not pressuring the dog to work through it, right? You must eat the cookie, or like old school impulse control with the toy. That's all incredibly frustrating with a lot of failure for the dog. All of that can skew your HPA axis into this like more stimulated state and a lot of anxiety. We don't want any of that, right? Over arousal, right? For dogs like that. And so by building it into a power pattern, we were able to hit on all of these physiology under the hood things that just reduce frustration, get an optimal state, and for a really young dog, a really beautiful selective attentional state as well. And eventually, because I see some of the questions coming by in the chat and we'll hit them later. Eventually, the value of the food does take on the value of the toy. We have seen that anecdotally, observationally for decades, right? Decades and decades. There's some people in this Zoom who've done that, and you can flip it. You can do the same with the toy. You just have to make sure you don't put pressure on the toy. So like when I said the dog doesn't even have to swallow it, just put it in your mouth, put it near your mouth, right? Interact with the food. It's got to be the same with the toy, right? And so it just builds all of that together. So that's a really, really cool example of a foundation power pattern that you can all be using with your dogs. So Bobby's got one with her baby Drazen next, I believe.
Okay, this is when he was a baby, just 12 weeks old. Before I play the video, I just want to talk about what I'm going to be doing. So we're looking at arousal management as well and creating a pattern out of it. Think of it as like flexing the nervous system, where you're starting to teach the dog to surf the YD curve. So in this video, you'll see that I'm tugging with him a few times, right? Because he's a baby. And also my intention is surfing the YD curve. So I don't want to get him so aroused that it'll be harder to bring him back down. So when you start working out, if you've never worked out, you might start with like 3-pound dumbbells and then build to 5-pound and then 10 and then so forth. Or you just do like a couple reps and then you build it from there. It's the same idea when you're sort of flexing your nervous system. So I play tug with him for several seconds, and then I scatter treats on the ground for him to sniff and find. And in this video, this is the first time that I put those two separate skills together. And the intention is for him to practice becoming aroused, then coming back down to baseline, a little bit in each direction. It's a neurobiological process, so it's not something that he's choosing. It can become more of a conscious process over the time, where a dog might choose activities to help them decompress when feeling aroused, uncomfortable, worried, or overwhelmed. So let's play the video. Can you hear it, Tracy?
Yes.
Okay. I know that's me, buddy. My Drazen's like, hey, I hear the fun noises from mom. So I'm making noises, I'm tugging with him. And then I trade it for some food. I have really delicious treats. So there's some nice toy balance play. Now, not every puppy or every dog is going to switch back and forth. There's lots of ways to manage this so that you can switch between food and toys. It's quite funny right here. A couple times I touch him and he's like, don't touch me. Stop. I want the food. I want the toy. So I'm thinking, oh, maybe I'll calm him down this way. And he's like, yeah, this is stupid, right? So you want to look at him looking away. His tail carriage goes down a little further. He starts sniffing. He starts moving away. And I read that. I'm like, got it. All right, this isn't working for you. So let's do a scatter instead. And he takes his time. Now, if you have a snuffle mat, you can do this on a snuffle mat. I like doing that more than in the grass if you can help it, because the snuffle mat becomes a cue to support the dog in sniffing. That's good. Awesome. I'll let him take his time doing this. And then you're going to see he's going to come back to me. And at some point, we're going to start tugging again. So I try to touch him again. Of course, he's like, what are you doing? Didn't I not tell you? We're working. I'm like, got it. Sorry. Got it. You're a herding dog. You don't want me to touch you. You're not like the terriers. And so I'm giving him as much time as he needs to sniff, sniff, sniff. And then we start to tug again. So now I'm getting him amped up again. We're tugging, we're tugging. Getting silly with him. And then I'm going to trade the toy again and do another scatter. And so if your dog doesn't like to, doesn't like food, like in the situation that Tracy's last video showed, or didn't wanted the food, sorry, the toy over the food, there are things that you can absolutely do. So maybe tug for less time, maybe not go back and forth so much, like I'm going back and forth, just tug and then just do the food once. You can change the value of the food. Drazen's a foodie, so I can use kibble even, and this could work. If your dog is not into tugging, you can use play, your own self as play, and running back and forth, your own movement, keeping it silly. If your puppy starts to jump up and bite you, so then instead of just running back and forth multiple times, you can just run in one direction and then drop some treats, wait till they're done eating all the treats, run in the other direction, drop some treats, wait till they're done. Ready? And then we play again. So you get the gist. You get the gist of how it's flexing, going up and down, surfing that YD curve, or practicing it, which is key because, come here, buddy. Practicing it, which is key because this is what it's going to take in terms of physiology for when we start to do adjustment when he gets older. Okay. Okay. So let's get into the power of Super Bowls. Hang on one sec. Come here, buds. Got a little excited by watching my videos. All right. So this is Neo, one of my students, and this is a really fun game that we started working on with him. We're using power patterns for clarity. So in this game, he's wrapping the wing and then he's going to the bowl. He already understands because we've built up to the point where clearly the Super Bowls game was very clear for him. He understands that. We started using it around a wing. Initially, if you guys can see the mouse, we started with the bowl really close where he would just wrap the wing and there's really no room to be incorrect. And it was very clear that go wrap the wing, get the bowl. And he had the skill of wrapping the wing already. This is an adult dog that we were working on building engagement back into the game. He has incredible skills in terms of an obstacle understanding. Over time, we started to increase the distance between the dog or the bowl and the wing. He was initially on a long line because there was a history of him running off and visiting, but you'll see in this video, he does not do that. So I'm going to mute this while I talk. So there you go. And she's making sure to manage the long line. And look at him. He's like, I understand the bowl. I understand. Even if there's an error, he gets a treat anyway. I understand the wing wrap and I understand that the bowl, and I'll say this to my clients, my students, think of the bowl being there as sort of like a promise for reinforcement. It's an opportunity. There you go. A very simple wing wrap game. And already, if you guys see back here, the instructor is back here, which is incredible. She moves the wings where the jump would be potentially a little further back. And they do a couple more, and the sessions were super short. Then there's also the videographer, right, standing right there, and that's incredible. A couple times he blew kisses at her, but he didn't leave the mama, which is amazing. So power patterns provide clarity, and there's so many different ways that you can actually set this up to create those kinds of power patterns. Just dropped a cookie on the way, and that's fine. Just keep going. High rate of reinforcement, which is incredible. So I'm going to show you the next video. So now this particular video was taken a month later. And at this point, she has, as you can already see from the still, there's people walking around already. So I'm going to move it a little further ahead so we can get to the point that I want to show you guys. So here, it's the same exercise. It's the same exercise, except there's going to be people walking around. They're coming around. There we go. Here we go. Now, there was so much value and clarity for this game, and the wings are closer together, you can see. And he looks, he's like, wait, what am I gonna, should I go visit? Nope. I know that I have to stay with, he thinks about it, comes right back into the game, which is amazing. Comes right and then wraps the wing again. Mom's fully connected. There we go. It's very exciting stuff. And this was a dog that you could not have, she could not take the leash off in the building. Like even if everyone was sitting out of the ring, he would just leave Mom immediately. It was incredible. All right, Tracy, you're up.
I'm up. I'm here. Here we go. The camera takes forever to go on. And this actually, Kathy just put in the chat because I'm trying to keep up with the chat also. Could this be used for a dog that's fearful of people walking in the ring? Because we have these crazy dog sports. The short answer is yes. We have these crazy dog sports where we want our dogs who are not bred to be in crowds to go into a crowded environment and work like no one else is there. And a lot of the dogs are like, time out, I am really uncomfortable. And so maybe I paid Kathy $20 to pitch that question because it leads us directly into the next application of the Power Bowls game, the power pattern with I call them Power Bowls, but then it sounds like, you know, something that you eat with like a lot of protein in it. But it's a power pattern with Super Bowls and obstacles. And it's designed to get the dogs to be super confident, not just ignoring stimulating distractions in the environment, but also being confident enough to go fast and do whatever sport it is and not worry about what they see, whether it's other dogs, other people, scary things, all that fun stuff. So, Bobby, if you want to play the first part of the video, I will show you what was happening at a seminar. It's a seminar in New York. This is a dog named Sunny. He's a toller. He's a wonderful dog. And he just could not do the agility. Like he did the tunnel and he was like slow and he couldn't do the jumps and was trotting. And so I, as an agility instructor, told his mama, get more exciting, reward more, run faster, connect more. Which like if this were Family Feud, right? Strike, all the wrong answer. Because the issue was not her connection. The issue was not running faster. The issue is that the dog was concerned about the people and the dogs outside the ring. So he's in this massively divided attentional state because he's concerned. And if you want to go ahead and stop the video for a second, poor Sunny, look how cute it is. That was me going, all right, clearly I'm telling her the wrong thing. So go ahead and stop it. Perfect timing, Bobby. You must be a dog trainer. And so I was like, well, this is going really wrong. What can we do to help this dog? And the answer is we had to help his brain instead of getting into the anxiety, right? The back of the brain saying, I'm worried. We can't do agility. We have to be concerned about those people and dogs. You can kind of see them off to the right side of your screen. I said, we have to get them in the selective state, power up the confidence. And one of the ways to do that is Super Bowls. And so this power pattern literally puts the bowls on the course. And earlier tonight, Sue asked, and Sue is actually here when this is happening, if you can use more than one bowl. You can use as many bowls as you like, because what really helps with Super Bowls is it gives the dog a visual thing to look at along with that up and down movement of eating. And when dogs are worried about the environment, they're hypervigilant. They're scanning back and forth. And that side to side scanning and eye movement actually increases anxiety, as we are told by our scientist friends. And so the Super Bowls and this power pattern with the obstacles help give the dog this visual target. And so that helped him reduce anxiety, go from that divided state where he was thinking about the people into the selective state where he could think about the agility with the mama. So if you want to go ahead and hit play on the video again, we start just with Super Bowls. It was the first time he'd seen this. So I'm coaching her to wait until he engages before she moves, which is hard for you humans. There you go. And then when he looks up into the tunnel, you can already see he's faster. And then her instructions were into the tunnel, run away for a cookie. Because I'm a big fan of if the dog is worried, let's move them away, right? Especially in dog sports. So she's waiting till he engages, go to the next bowl. Wait till he engages. Next bowl. And then he engages. Tunnel, tunnel, tunnel. Woohoo! So we did that a couple of times. And you can already see he's running. Tail up, getting him away. Hopefully mama was happier because no one wants to see their dog worried. So now we're adding the power pattern to a jump. He engages. He's going to go over a jump to the next Super Bowl. It's taking him a little longer because it's hard. He's doing it in front of the crowd. But when he's taking the jump, A, he's taking it and not running past it. And B, watch his body language. This is right in front of the crowd. Happy little dog. Tail is up, not thinking nearly as much. He's aware of the people, but he's not divided. So he is able to start putting sequences. I wish we had a video of a longer sequence of him going, but we don't. We just have those little clips. But you can see how it already was pumping up his confidence, because one of the cool things that the Super Bowls does is under the hood, it reduces the hypervigilance, which in turn reduces the anxiety, which is really, really helpful, not only for dogs that slow down when they get concerned, like Sunny was slowing down. You'll see examples later on, and we can also apply it to dogs that get frantic when they're anxious, barking, jumping, spinning, all of that stuff. They go to the other end of the behavioral spectrum. It might all be for the same reason, right? So this little power pattern of bringing your Super Bowls into the ring and having the dog in between the obstacles and on course doing that. And I've done that with dogs where we basically do an entire course of Super Bowl, a couple of obstacles, Super Bowl, couple of obstacles, Super Bowl, couple of obstacles, right? So that really, really is great for pumping up the confidence, right? So if you want to go to the next one, we're going to start to build up even more. So now we've got more of the power patterns, and I call them equations because we're trying to find the combinations that get success. So what we've done is we've taken a lot of the foundation, the regular pattern games, and we combine them and we apply them into equations with the outcome being success in whatever way that we're helping the dog. And so the order of festivities that we're going to present these in start with outside the ring, right? It could be stuff that you're out of the car, you're at home, you're practicing, right? And then we take it from outside of the ring to the ring, like to the edge of the ring, to watching, which is real hard in a lot of these dog sports. And then we take it from outside the ring to the start line, because start lines are a hot topic in dog agility and probably in obedience too, like going from outside to inside, especially when you don't have food or a toy that you can bring in. And then we're also going to look at sport specific applications inside the ring that you can use. And you can use them in fly ball, you can use them in agility. We've got examples of both. And we can also talk about ways to apply it to obedience, rally, scent work, all the other sports out there. It's not a one sport deal, right? Obedience is hard because it's a long thing for the dog. So moving from outside the ring to inside the ring can be really, really challenging for the dog. So if you want to take me to the first power pattern equation, we also will be looking at co-regulation and arousal management with all of this stuff. So here is a foundation session, a practice session at home, where you see the equation just appeared, where it's basically a combination of Super Bowls, back and forth, and up and down. We are hitting all the bases, behaviorally, physiologically, operantly. We're getting them all. And here I am teaching it to my puppy who is 11 months old, and he's getting into the age where he's going to start going places. I might actually start training him to do things. So he needs to understand these games so that when he walks into a challenging environment like fly ball, that his head does not fly off his shoulders, because he's a whippet, and you know what whippets like to do? They like to chase things. And what is fly ball? Fly ball is a lot of dogs going real fast, right? So he needs to understand how to engage with me and not be hypervigilant in the environment. So if you want to go ahead and play that video of Mr. Ramen P. Noodles, just a short little thing. So I'm doing up and down, and he's going back and forth, and I'm using these bowls as a target. And interestingly, as I go up, you see that he will start to also lift his front feet off the ground. It might be a physiological co-regulation whatever it is, it's freaking cute. Right? Isn't that interesting? We need some electrodes, sir. And so you can see this is just the side view of the same game that I'm teaching him how to maintain his focus and engagement and ignore the environment because I'm outdoors, there's birds, there's squirrels. This is how you can offer engagement in a new environment, sir. And he's on a leash because when's he going to need to do this? When he's on a leash. So even though the leash is uncomfortable for me, I am doing that. And I'm also doing it easily at home, knowing that at a trial, whether it's agility or fly ball, I'm going to be wanting him to be in front of me, facing me. Right. The next step now, we're taking the dog more into the trial environment. And this next video does basically the same power pattern, but now we're in the trial environment. She's actually in the parking lot because one of the things she told me was that her young dog gets overstimulated just at the thought of going through a door. And I said, oh, you mean the door of the building? And she went, no, any door. Right? Because dogs are smart. They make associations real quick like that. And this is an adolescent Vizsla, very good girl. And she had been taught this game in their home environment. So it's not like we're in a parking lot teaching her this game. If you want to turn the sound up and play the video, I'll let you guys see what she's doing. She is right outside the door where there's a trial going on inside. So you can see the dog is like, let me in. And we're like, we need to have a regulation moment, ma'am.
Can you hear it?
No. But that's all right. Oh, now I can hear it, I think. So we're letting this dog make choices, and she's a pointing dog. You can see her doing a little pointing with the foot coming up. And as the session goes, you'll see the dog go into a different state of attention and arousal and start to offer behavior. And then she's going to start to offer her lineup, which is between the handler's feet. You see the tail wagging. She offered the sit. The handler cued the lineup, but the dog had a really low latency, did it nice and fast. So here it is again with the combo. And one thing that the handler mentions here is the dog is leaning on her, which is unique for this dog. That the dog normally does not do that. And what it means we'll know in the long run because she's not even 2 years old yet. And she's still looking at the door, but you can see that she's much better able to regulate her arousal, not pull the handler. And when she does go into the building, she's going to have a much easier time getting ringside with the dog without the dog going into this over aroused state. Because as many of you know, when they go into that over aroused state, it's really hard to bring them back. And then your dog's work in the ring will be affected, and yours will too, because you're going to be obsessing about what the dog just did, right? So by being able to get them into that nice centered state, it really makes your life much more successful, right? The funny thing at the end of this video is they stopped the session because the videographer was like, car, there was a car coming, right? And they chose to not get hit by the car, which was nice, good choice. And so Chada in that video was really, really good about working on her internal arousal, self-regulating that, really, really beautiful selective attentional state. Not sustained because we weren't asking for it, but able to select staying engaged with the handler and not just trying to get into the building, right? Raise your hand in the chat if you have a dog that's like, I'm just going in, right? Or a dog that's like, oh my God, this is worrisome. This game will work for both. So now the next one, and I will note that even though that this is an agility ring that this dog is going towards, right? Sue's like, SOTC. By the way, before we leave the Vizsla, this happened last weekend, right? Because I'm like, get me videos of your work at the trial. And she said that she was able to get that puppy, adolescent, ringside with a really civilized, engaged state of mind, which is huge, a huge improvement, right? And something that we all want. And so here in this next one, this can be applied to fly ball. This can be applied to any of your sports. A lot of dog sports, you're waiting ringside. So this is the same variation of you're taking your Super Bowls, you're back and forth and you're up and down and making it a power pattern, right? And so we've got our Super Bowl targets to reduce the hypervigilance. The dog is moving a tiny bit back and forth, not as much as my whippet when he was in front of me, because the dog is between the handler's feet. And there's a huge up and down co-regulation and vestibular response that's happening with the dog. So I think there's sound on this. Yeah, there is sound. My notes say sound up. The very beginning of the video shows you what this Aussie, it's also a pretty young dog, Aussie named Josie, what it looks like without the power patterns outside the ring. So go ahead and play the video. There is some entertainment value.
Ooh.
So this is the dog being like, hey, there's dogs running. Hey, there's a dog at the end of the leash, barking, 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 barking. Right. So you can go ahead and stop the video. Raise your hand in the chat if you've ever had a dog that's done that. Me, I'll raise both my hands. And what happens is when they go into that state of arousal outside the ring, and they actually become sustained in their attentional state, but it's sustained on the dogs that are moving or barking, right? And someone in the signups asked about chasing in flyball. There's a leash on the dog, but if the leash was not there, that dog would be chasing, right? That dog would be running in the ring. So for me, it's the same behavior. And we use these power patterns to help the dog be able to ignore what's going on. Then when it is this dog's turn to go in the ring, everything is just much better because of the internal physiology and attentional state, right? Not, oh, Josie, yay, Josie, right? Yay. So go ahead and play the rest of it. Now we need the happy ending. Good girl. So she goes into the ring like that, like a bunny on her back legs. And I believe the handler reported that perhaps it was good, but not great, right? And here's later in the day, Josie also has been taught these power patterns away from agility. So you can see there's nice little latency. She recognizes the framework, gets right into it. There's a dog going into the ring, very, very much the same environment. And look at the difference in the dog, right? Someone asked earlier, how do I get my dog to chill outside the ring? That might have been Brandy. This is one of the ways, right? This is absolutely one of the ways. And then we don't have video of the run, but handler reports that it was really good. She's working on her start lines and her contacts. And one of the ways to have great start lines and contacts and weaves and box turns is to have this regulated arousal outside the ring, right? Getting them into the sustained state is the next webinar, but this is the huge step forward. Exactly. That's a yay, Josie moment in the chat, right? And so I know that that's an agility context, but we do the same thing in flyball for dogs that want to be at the end of the leash chasing, right? So for me, it's a chase behavior, even though the leash is preventing it. And in flyball, chasing is a big no-no, obviously. So we teach them to be able to not chase by using this power pattern, right? So if you want to go to the next slide, now we are going to go to the start lines. That's a big thing in agility and obedience. Start lines are stressful. When I think about me going from the outside of the ring to the start line, I can feel my HPA axis activating, right? Now at least I have a name for what it is, but I can feel it. Like you feel your body chemistry change. And so if it's happening to me, who has seen a course map and has been doing this for many years, can you imagine what's happening to my dogs, right? Especially since they can regulate with me and I'm sure they can smell it and they can see the difference in my body language. So it's something that we really, really need to help the dogs do is go from outside the ring to inside the ring. Common complaint I hear from handlers, or observation, I should say, is that everything changes the minute you step into the ring. Everything changes, and you're not wrong. It does, right? And it's especially true of dogs that only work for food, because you can make an easier transition for dogs that you can bring a toy into the ring in venues that allow it, but not all sports allow it, and not all dogs work for toys. Right? Not all dogs think they're cool. So we've got two power patterns for you that are specific to the start line. So if you want to go to the next slide, and by the way, that picture, that start line picture, that's totally me in the sprinters blocks. It's totally me. It's not. All right. Bobby's like, I'm going to go back to show everyone that it's not you. That's totally what my legs look like. So this is my little Electra dog. She does like to play with toys, but when she's doing agility or fly ball, she does both. She's food. She's a food hound, and I can relate, right? So am I. And so to teach her to move to the start line with confidence, I combined into a power pattern, Super Bowls, back and forth, and the jump, and the whole procedure with getting the leash off, right? So all these things that we need the dogs to understand before they start to trial, I start to bring into the ring. So what you can see behind me here, and then what you can see over here, There are two giant bowls in the grass because they need to be really big visual targets. So if you want to go ahead and play the video, thank you, Bobby. I realize on my screen share, you can't see my cursor. Sorry. Thanks, Bobby. So go ahead and play the video. She's covering my butt. So I put a cookie down, a lecture engages. I go to the start line. She says, yeah, I'm cool, engages. I run to the next bowl, put a cookie down. She engages. I go to the start line. She engages. Oh, she even offered the sit. I did not cue that. So I run to the next bowl, wait for her to engage. Super Bowls, we wait for the dog to say they're ready. Little extra long sniff there. Is this game hard? Probably. We're in a new location. She's never done it in this location. She engages. I go to the start line. She offers the sit. She does not have to offer the sit, but I'm not sad about it. She engages. We go to the start line. And I'm like, all right, let's take the leash off. She remains engaged, and that's really exciting. So I run to the bowl, Super Bowl. So I'm also beginning to develop a little bit of remote reinforcement, meaning the reward's not at the start line, a lecture, the reward's outside the ring. And I'll tell you specifically how you can apply it to the sports that require the reward to be outside the ring. So she wants to be on my left side. It's perfectly cool. She stays engaged when the leash comes off. And this is me just saying, all right, enough with the leash. She offers the sit. So I lead out a little bit. Then I say, good girl, we run to the bowl. Then I got my apt back in gear, put the leash back on, go to the start line, because most venues require leash to the start line. Get rid of the leash, just like you would at a trial. She remains engaged, offers a sit. I cue the jump and then run to the bowl. So now we're building in the sport. So that's jump 1 of 20, right? And eventually you can get the dog to do all 20 obstacles with, yes, I am giving a release cue. Thanks, Brandy, to get her to go to the first jump. Eventually you will build up an entire course between your Super Bowls, right? But there's one more step. Ooh, perfect timing. There's one more step you have to do before you can start building in more and more obstacles. I mean, you can build in more obstacles at this stage, but the next step is the power pattern that involves you not having food or toys on you. So now we've taken what I just showed you with Electra, the Super Bowls, the back and forth, we've got the jump, we've got the leash, we're doing agility. And the thing with agility is they get real mad if you have food in the ring at trials, right? And a toy, because at some point you're going to maybe want to run for real and not have a toy on you. So we need the dogs to understand that even with this power pattern, the food is going to sometimes be left at the bowls. So you can see behind the bowls, if you want to work your cursor magic, Bobby, there's a red stool behind one bowl and the cookies are on top of it. There's a blue stool behind the other bowl and there's cookies on top of that. And so I do not have cookies in my hands or pockets for this game at this point. Hot Sauce knows this game, different dog. She knows this game. This dog worries. She's behind the wing. This dog worries at start lines, probably because of a pain issue that was undiagnosed as a youngster. But that pain issue's been resolved. So now I need to rebuild the confidence that got kind of mushed with the pain. And I'm now teaching her that when there's no cookies or toys, how to predict and get into the pattern, right? So I'm just doing it with one jump. So if you want to go ahead and start that video, it fades the reinforcement off of the handler's body. So here's my little birthday girl. I put a cookie in the bowl. There's nothing in my hands, even though she's checking, because, you know, optimism. Go to the line, leash off. Little bit of a moment where she's like, but there's cookies. She offers the sit. So I say yes, and we run to the next bowl. Takes me a minute to get a cookie off of the thing. She's whacking the bowl, waiting for me to get the cookie off. Cookies are on the blue thing. Nothing in my hands or pockets. And I start the game by putting one cookie in the bowl. She engages. We go to the start line. Look at her waggy tail. She offers the sit even before the leash is off. Oops, she forgot her sit and then she put herself back in it. I release, we run to the bowl. So there's no cookies or toys. There's a phone in my back pocket, but that is not edible, thankfully. So now she's in the groove. All right, I do more lead outs. This can be so hard for this dog, so stressful. She wants to freeze on the line. So by teaching her the start gate, end gate power pattern involving all of this, I'm getting a really, really, really great start line performance from this dog. Because even at home, she can freeze up on the start line when I lead out when there's no food. Oops, she almost went to the wrong bowl, so I helped her out there. And there's been cheese sitting on that red stool the whole time. She could easily just go run and take it, but she's learning the impulse control of the way to get it is to go to the power pattern. And now here's me just being a bad handler. Go to the next bowl. So there's still elements of back and forth because I'm going one bowl to the other, to the one bowl to the other. The bowls provide the visual to get rid of any hypervigilance, any of that anxiety of all the things going on around her. The up and down element of this is me bending down and her bending down, that co-regulation, and the remote reinforcement, critical skill for success. And what I mean by remote reinforcement is that the dog knows where the food and toys are outside the ring, and they can still work without the food and toys there. And so before we leave that, just to give you a quick overview of where that goes, and we can answer more in the Q&A later, where that goes is I eventually at home build up kind of what I was doing with my little black and white dog, Electra, where I do have the cookies on me and we do more and more sequences, variable number of obstacles, include contacts, building up to courses where there's a bowl before and after. And then we move to what I was doing with Hot Sauce, which is teaching her how to run from the entry gate bowl, a full course, to the exit gate bowl with nothing on me. And then, yes, I am the nut at a trial that's got a bowl at the entry gate and a bowl at the exit gate because trials have both. And at the right before we go in, when they're saying hot toss is on the line, instead of just handing her the last cookie, what do you think I do with that last cookie? I put it in the bowl. And she goes, I know this pattern. So I put it in the bowl. She eats her cookies. We go in. We do exactly what you saw here on the video, just with maybe 19 more obstacles. Then we run out and we get to the exit bowl, and then we put a cookie in the exit bowl. And for those of you guys that are at doing agility or obedience in venues where you can have the food literally right outside the ring gate, cool. For those of you guys where your venues have like rules about like it's got to be 10 feet away or 15 feet away or whatever, that's where your bowls can be. You just work it up so that your bowls are far enough away that the dog still is playing this gigantic power pattern. And you don't need then your bowls to be right at the entry and exit gate because the dog understands the entire power pattern. And so it's not just remote reinforcement. It includes all this physiological regulation. And then after I did this video with Hot Sauce, because we've been working this skill, I did a regular agility thing to how to put something on video for a class. She had the best start lines I've ever seen her have in her 5 years of life. I was like, wow, right? Thank you, power pattern, right? The happiest, best, most confident release start line. So that is a nice little handler reporting of bonus happiness at the end of it. So you can also, using these games, with the food on you or with the remote reinforcement, I always start with the food on me. It's just easier, right? One less thing in the equation. You can also build in the things that might stimulate your dogs, either over arousal or make them anxious, like other people. The leash runner. Why are the leash runners 2 inches from us nowadays? In flyball, you can have the stuff on you, but walking past the other dogs, right? You often in agility have to go into the ring when another dog is finishing, right? In obedience, going into the ring when the judge is approaching or the stewards. I don't know a lot about obedience, you can tell. But you can build in all of the things that you recognize your dog has a question about into this little power pattern, right? And you'll find that the dog very easily can handle that. All right, so let's go to the next one. Zoom definitely needs music while we're changing the pictures. So now we've gotten the dog to the start line. Now we got to deal with what's going on in the ring in any of these sports. And so you can see this is a picture of me and my little Papillon showing extreme confidence in the ring because look at what's going on behind him, right? So many cool people in this picture, so much activity. Can you hear the noise coming out of the picture? But the dog is completely on task. So if you want to go to the next slide, I'll show you some of the ways that we get that, not just in flyball, but in any sport. We need to bring this self-regulation and this engagement and all the things we're working on into the ring. So in flyball, you can literally bring it into the ring. And the cool thing about flyball, one of the many cool things, is that you can rent the ring for $5 and train in the ring, right? Either the night before or the night in between 2 days of a tournament. So in this video, what you're going to see is a border collie named Roby. I forget how old he is, maybe 4. He is a highly successful agility dog, and he's new to flyball. He just started his flyball career. He's doing amazingly well with the flyball part of it in terms of go down, get the ball, come back. Fabulous. And in the class situation, fabulous passing the dogs. But as you all know, in any sport, trialing and training are 2 separate beasts. So what he's having trouble with is over arousal with dogs going by, right? Because he's got to wait for his turn. And here's all these dogs whipping by him, 2 lanes of dogs, and then it's his turn. And by the time it's his turn, he may or may not be able to take his eyes off of the other dogs, right? He might snark, or he might turn around, or he might be hypervigilant on a dog in another ring. And he's just an example. He is not unusual in flyball. It's something we've got to teach the dogs, is how to ignore all these dogs whizzing past you. All right. So this dog, Roby, wonderful dog, wonderful handler. They were like, excuse me, we need some help. So I'm like, I got a game for you. I got a power pattern. So we taught him the Super Bowls real quick. Didn't take long at all. And then we put him into the flyball lineup position, which is for most people between your feet, right? It's just easier to line them up. And I'm applying this game now inside the ring, literally, while a relatively fast dog is moving, right? We didn't have any dogs doing the real flyball yet on this video, but you can see how we're using the Super Bowls to give his eyes a target, to help get rid of the anxiety, because anxiety for him was the hypervigilance, the getting overstimulated by the movement of the other dogs. So the Super Bowls get rid of the hypervigilance, and the up and down of the handler going up and down and his head going up and down really gets a beautiful regulation for both of them, right? So go ahead and play that video, and I'll kind of talk you through what was going on. This is very relatable. So my 10-year-old dog is being my helper there. So you can see that when Roby looks up at Elizabeth, she bends down and puts a cookie in the bowl. Good for her. She's super fast about it. And the quickness of their movements also speaks to how much arousal both of them are in. Right? When I'm doing this at home with my Whippet, I'm moving slowly. I'm in my pajamas. I'm relaxed. Here's the 2 of them in a competition environment with a dog running by. And you can see they're both moving more quickly, but highly successful. So what we're getting is a lot of success operantly. We're getting a lot of success in terms of the physiology. And we're also incorporating state-dependent memory, which is making sure he understands this engagement skill with the handler in the internal state that he will be in when he needs it in the competition ring. And so this was done on a Saturday night in April. And I don't have the video, unfortunately. Maybe I'll find it. And we actually put this into the ring the next day successfully while he was competing. So he was running an anchor, which is the last dog in flyball, a 4th out of 4. And he had to stand there while 3 other dogs are going. And what was happening was Elizabeth was doing her bowls, the up and down, her power pattern. And then when it was his turn, she just slid into the ring and then set him down. And he was perfect, absolutely perfect. Did not even look at any of the dogs that he looked at the day before. And then at the end of the heat, when he got his ball and got to the back, she gave him a snuffle mat so he could snuffle and clear his head. Because you know what? This is real hard, right? If you think it's hard for the humans, it's real hard for the dogs, right?
Can I just say,
All right.
Tracy, it's
Yes,
like
go ahead.
they were moving so fast that it looked like the left side of the screen was in fast forward, like double the time the speed. And then I had to look over to, because I thought maybe I pressed the wrong thing. And then I'm like, wait, no, Tracy and Voodoo are moving normally. I was like,
Right. No one's ever
arousal.
Right. No one's ever accused me of looking like I'm in fast forward. They're like, is that video in slow motion? I'm like, no, I'm running. But yeah. And so a lot of folks, I think, are afraid in some ways to address arousal, but for dog sports, we have to. The only way to get happy, confident, successful dog sports going is to go through the arousal, like peel away the layers of the onion, see what's going on under there and help the dog. And so Roby was wicked successful with these power patterns, and we'll keep continuing it, and eventually he won't need them because he'll be able to self-regulate. But wow, what a difference in just, I think we taught him Super Bowls 10 minutes before we shot this video. We did this for 5 minutes, and then we put it in the ring the next day. And he was like, I got it, right? Because that's how quickly, if they have an underlying foundation of patterns, that's how quickly you can move in a lot of cases with these power patterns. Really cool. All right, one more context. Two more contexts. Sorry, my notes are out of order. Both of these next two contexts speak directly to things that people struggle with in the ring. And one is obstacle execution, meaning they're perfect at home, but they can't do it in the competition ring, especially when there's no food or toys, because oftentimes you'll see anxiety come up. They'll go into that divided state of attention, that divided attentional state where they can't weave if the judge is moving, right? The brain is like, danger, danger, judge is moving. Or they can't get the ball off the box and fly ball because there's another dog in the other lane and they can see it. So that is that divided attentional state that we're going to attack to get them into the selective attentional state, which really helps get obstacle execution in new locations. So the ones that come to mind are, it's not just obstacles. It can be things like the stay, all the obstacles, the box turn, collection, running contacts, stopped contacts, weave entries, obviously. All the things that your dog might have trouble executing that I would consider trained skills, operantly trained skills, because they're in that divided attentional state and their brain is struggling to pick out the skill. So this is a back and forth Super Bowls power pattern involving the weaves. And you can do it with any obstacle you want. If I had a fly ball box, I would have shown you it with a fly ball box because it's very fun with a fly ball box. And so on each side of my screen, you'll see that giant bowl, right? And you'll see a couple, you'll see 6 weave poles. You don't need to do it on 12. And so I start off, if you want to play the video, I will narrate as we go. And it was about 1,000,000 degrees. So this is weaving when it's hotter than the surface of the sun. So when he engages, I started by putting a cookie in the bowl. He engages and I cue the weaves and he hits the entry. Good boy, keeps weaving. Go to the next bowl, cue the weaves, go to the next bowl. So this is the dog saying, oh, I can hit these entries. They're slightly angled entries here, not too bad. So now I want to work on harder entries and I've moved the bowls to harder angles. I start, cookie on the bowl, he engages, we do the weaves. When he gets them, we run to the next bowl, he engages. I run to the next bowl when he gets it right. And after I've put it in the bowl, I turn and I face the poles so that when he engages, I can immediately cue the next thing. And what I'm getting here, other than obviously he's weaving correctly each time from any angle that I try, I'm getting a really nice arousal regulation on the weave poles. We're in a new location. He is not sniffing around. He's not looking at the other dogs. On this property, they have access to cows, right? This is a Border Collie Whippet mix. There's all sorts of things inside of him that would want to go visit cows, but nope, right? And so the Super Bowls and the back and forth are really helping him deal with self-regulation and arousal management so he can pick out the weave poles in the massive amount of distractions in his world. And then what I would do next is I would then play this game with harder distractions, incorporating the things that might be harder. Like maybe I'll have my other dogs running around on the other side of a fence with a Frisbee, or strange people, right? Or maybe I'll run faster, because when I'm running fast in those rare moments, that could be very distracting to the dog, can really divide their attentional state, right? Motion versus picking out the obstacle. So a lot of folks are like, how do you get the weave poles confident? Well, that's one of the ways I do it. All right. Now, if you want to be fancy and really get a power pattern going, think back to what I did with Hot Sauce, the little black and tan dog, where I had the remote reinforcement going. A lot of people struggle in the ring in something like the weaves where they don't have food on them. So you can teach this power pattern, but do it remote reinforcement style where the food stays by the bowls, like I showed you for the start line with my little black and tan dog, Hot Sauce, which is also your CEU, secret word, right? So you can really take this pretty far to get the dog ready to be successful in the ring, fast, confident, and accurate with no food or toys on you, right? And really nice arousal management. All right, now we go to the last one. One last power pattern we're going to show you. And then this is one of my favorites. One thing that dogs struggle with on course is when something unexpected happens. And that unexpected thing can be in any sport. That unexpected thing could be like in agility, I disconnect. Shocker. Imagine that. I disconnect all the time. Right. Or I cue the wrong obstacle. Or in flyball, they get chased. Right. They can't find me. Something happens. Sometimes in flyball, the ball just does a thing and flies away. And the dog is like, where? I call it, they get the twisties. They don't know where they are in space. Right. And they're looking for you. Something's gone wrong. And in those moments when the dog knows something has gone wrong, that's where arousal management is super, super, super important, because they can really go over aroused or under aroused. And I'll give you examples of both. Let's say that I disconnect on course and I'm running my dog Voodoo when he was 2 years old. If I would disconnect and something went wrong and he didn't know what to do, he would immediately get over aroused and start coming at me, barking and trying to deliver a tooth hug, also known as biting, right? Like more like the rip your clothing type of bite. Or the opposite could be you mess up and the dog doesn't know what to do and they start to sniff or slow down, or zoomies, right? That's the same thing as my dog sniffing or my dog coming to bite me or barking at me, or they can no longer find any obstacles, right? They can't even think about obstacles, or they go visit the ring crew, right? I happen to have had dogs that have done all of that at some point in their career. And so this game builds on the back and forth pattern game by teaching the dog that when something unexpected happens, using in this case the scenario of disconnection, where I'm no longer engaged, how to find my face, find my engagement. And that helps the dog stay in that optimal state of arousal, regulate their internal state, not get frustrated. And so that, and I'm not giving you all permission to screw up in the ring, don't get me wrong, but it's dog sports. We mess up. I'm kind of saying to the dog, hey, I might mess up, but it's a cue to regulate yourself and remain engaged. Don't get frustrated. Don't change arousal states. So go ahead and play this Find My Face video. I will talk you through all of it. Good old Contraband. He was young. Oh, it starts with Electra, that back and forth game. And I'm turning my back on her. And all she has to do is kind of come around to the side or front of me and look up at me. And she's looking up at me like, what's your problem, human? She was real young, maybe 6 months when I did this. Real tiny. Not that she's big. So now I'm totally disconnecting. And she's like, yeah, it's a pattern. I eat the cookie and then I come find you. Oh, and then you throw another cookie the other direction. Now I'm starting to add really disconnecting and walking away, being completely clueless. Like things you really never should do, but yet somehow we find a way to accidentally do it because we're human. It's fine. Now I'm pretending I'm really lost or talking to the instructor. She finds my face. I'm not a good actor, not at all. She finds my face. So she's like, I got it. So now I apply that. Contraband has learned this. I apply that to an agility course. All right. Find my face when something goes wrong. In this case, I'm using a toy, but you can also chuck the cookie. So the pattern is when I disengage, find my face, reward, power pattern. And you can see how this dog is like, whatever, this is part of the fun. And when I disconnect, he'll find my face after continuing on a line of obstacles, which is really nice in agility. All right. They learn to do it without you if you're not connected. It's not mandatory. Find my face however you can, sir. But if it happens to include obstacles, even better. So you can see, if you want to hit pause for a second, you can see that when I was disconnected and stopping abruptly, this is a young dog at the time who did not get frustrated, did not leave or sniff or bite me. He just was like, got it. This is the pattern. I can control my arousal. I'm staying in that nice attentional state. I will await further instructions, human, right? And so I would love to give you a happy ending of a gorgeous, like, oh, look how good this run is. Look how good my connection was. But this is actually one of Contraband's very first trial runs, who's probably 20 months old, right? Baby dog, jumping low. and I was trying to do the whole run, and I had a Frisbee down my back for the very end. And I accidentally played this power pattern in the ring because I was having some arousal management trouble where I could not calm myself down enough to give cues for a very long time. So you'll see me mess up. And what does he do? He immediately finds my face. So I reset, keep going, then he finds my face again. I managed to do it 3 times. So if you want to hit play. So here's me. My internal state was insane. Here's me freaking out. Good boy. Oh, I find mama's face. Okay, good mama. I held it together for like 2 obstacles, freaked out. He finds my face, no frustration. Right here, I was telling myself to calm down, watch the dog. So I got 4 obstacles in a row, 5 in a row without freaking out. Freaked out one last time, disconnected, and he found my face after taking an obstacle. So now, was it ideal that my handling was that bad? No, of course not, because that was real bad, right? I had a little talk with myself afterwards about like human arousal management. But was it ideal that his attentional state did not shift and his arousal state did not shift and he was not frustrated? Yes, that was ideal. So by having taught him this power pattern, he easily could step into the ring and kind of let me make my mistakes. Now, am I working hard to not make those mistakes? Yes, of course I am, in all fairness to the dog. But I'm keeping that game neutralized and playing it a lot at home so that if it happens in the ring, it's all good fun, not frustrating, right? He had so many things he could have done there if he had gotten frustrated. But because we had taught him this power pattern, he was able to stay super, super, super confident, relaxed, great arousal management, right? So those are many, many things that you guys can do in the ring. So we can go back and answer some of the questions, I think, that maybe you haven't answered.
Should we go to the last couple slides before so we don't lose people?
Yeah, go for it. Yes.
All right, guys, some big information. We have coming soon. We have another live brain camp if you want to come work with us in person. And Dr. Kathy Murphy will be there too, as well as Elliot Connor for our scent work track.
Oh, we love Elliot.
Yes. So the 4 of us, the brain camp crew, will be in Julian, North Carolina on December 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Stay tuned for information. We'll be getting that information out to you guys soon to register. But you might as well book your Airbnbs now. And then Tracy, do you want to talk about
yes, we like in this day and age of webinars that are like multi-hours long, most of us kind of like watching Netflix, right? Where you can either watch 20 or 30 minutes of a show and then like go do something else, or you can just binge the whole thing. So we are opening a new website very soon. It's not up yet, where we're going to take webinars and develop webinars. And they're going to be in the Netflix format where they'll be in 20 to 30 minute episodes where you can either watch them in 30 minutes and then come back another time, watch the next part of it, or you can just binge, right? Brain camp and chill.
I love
and so you
stuff.
can it's up to you how you take the information in, because most seminars are like 2 to 3 hours long, which is a lot for people like you and me to sit around. And so like even this seminar, we'd probably maybe cut it in half. And some of the 4-hour ones we've done, we'll do like in like 30-minute bites that will make sense and you'll get all the information. But it'll be more like in that Netflix style, which really suits everyone's lifestyle, I think, nowadays. So that's coming soon. And a lot of these webinars that we've been talking about will all go live there, right? So it'll be more like you can just go to a website, pick out what you want to see, and like get that one, right? Like Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime. So we'll have content that we've created in the past year, plus new content for a variety of sports, right? We're hoping to get, agility, fly ball, scent work. I'd love to get some obedience. Like there's so many things that we can be doing and put up in that webinar. Mm-hmm. Yes, rally, like whip it racing. That's on my agenda for the year. Right. I'm a little obsessed, but that is coming. And so this webinar will end up there, but you will also get the recording of this sometime by tomorrow night, along with the slides and, as promised, the field guides. like for each little game, like the step by step that you can just pop on your phone, go out to the yard or wherever you're training, the ring, and be like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. Because I know that if I look at something on the computer and then I walk like 5 minutes, then it's gone from the brain. Right. So that's why we do field guides, so that you are absolutely able to just, without even having to print, because who has a printer? Without having to print it, you can just look at your phone or your iPad and be like, got it. That's what I do. Or write it on the back of your hand. Right. It'll be that useful. Just bullet point it. Right. So that
Brandy asked, is it a subscription or oops, I lost it. Where did it go?
or a one-off.
Yeah.
It's going to start as a one-off, right? Where you can buy it by webinar. And then once it gets off the ground and we have a lot of content, because it'll take us a long time to load the content, then we might look into a subscription, right? So it'll start one at a time.
Cool.
Yay.
And then we want to say thank you so much for coming to our webinar. And this is how you can find us if you want to work with us. As you guys must know about Agility University, Tracy's amazing. You can see she's so creative. Work with her. And me, you guys can hang out with me too.
Yeah. Yay. Yeah, Agility University is becoming kind of like Brain Camp University. Right?
BCU.
We're evolving.
BCU, right.
BCU.
So we have some really great questions. And hold on a sec. There was a question that I thought would be really great to answer in a conversation. So Brandy asked, this is going back to the Find My Face video that you showed. What if your dog turns into a barking tornado when you disconnect? If the dog runs to you and barks at you, do you still reward, or is there a better way to play this game and avoid a behavior chain or frustration?
Yes, they still eat the cookie. It is not a reinforcement. And that's something that is mind-blowing as we start this, is we're not really operantly doing things. So it's not reward or punish or anything like that. It's eat the cookie or don't eat the cookie. And in that moment, if I disconnect and my dog comes at me like a tornado, asking
Barking
for a friend,
tornado.
of course, a barking tornado, like Voodoo. I wish I had Voodoo videos from when he was 2. If they come at me, it's not an indication of what's going on in the moment. It's more an indication of that my game is not neutralized, right? You could see that there's all these foundations that I put in, like, and my dogs, like they love that game. They love it when I screw up, because it's a cheap and easy way to come in and get a cookie, or find a jump and get a cookie. And so if that happens, what you're going to want to do is, before you do anything else in sport, you're going to want to go out and take this game back to the flat work, back to the underwear, and start it from the ground up, and then apply it to the agility, right? Like, you don't want to put your prom dress on if you don't have the right undergarments, right? And I used to certainly run around in my prom dress in all the wrong undergarments. And so I learned that you have to go back and make sure that you've got your foundation. And it doesn't take long, because people hate it when we're like, go back, do the foundation. It does not take long at all.
It's worth it. It's worth it. And the thing is, what I tell my students a lot of times is, like, once they've learned the game, is, you know what, just like once a class, pretend to get lost and give them a treat. So that way you're maintaining the behavior. And then when you go into a ring and that happens, it's part of the game. So you don't have the barking tornado. It's just part of the game. The reason you probably have the barking tornado now is because there's been a history of frustration conditioned into the experience, and we can fix it. And for now, just pretend that there is no barking tornado, give the treat regardless. It will start to lower.
Right. It's not an operant behavior that you have to think about in terms of reinforcement or punishment. It's communication.
Yeah.
Right? And dogs communicate differently. So your dog becomes a barking tornado. And I would bet that Nacho, my Papillon, would become a sniffing dust moth. Right. And it's just communication. It's not like they're like, I think perhaps I will lose my mind and bark at my mother. No, they're like, I'm so frustrated. And so I'll give the cookie, because we're not actually rewarding behavior. We're trying to work on the physiology, and then I'll reset things. Right. And if I need to in that moment be like, oh God, I better refresh my Find My Face game, I will go to that. Right. And Bobby, it's a great idea to pretend you're lost at least once every class. For those of us that don't need to pretend. That's even better. You get plenty of practice.
Yeah, or at least, and then if you do get lost for real and your dog finds your face, oh, thank you for finding my face. I was really lost this time.
Right.
Wasn't
When
pretend.
people, right. I have all these young dogs, and 3 of them after COVID, 3 of them debuted in agility. People were like, "What's the first thing you taught them?" And I was like, "Find my face," because right, like, how did I prepare them to trial? I prepared them to deal with me. I'm like, find my face for when I mess up. And the dogs were like, okay. So they were all able to tolerate my messing up and not get frustrated, because what's the one thing that we all do? We mess up, and it's fine.
Yeah.
Right?
It
It's
frustrates
totally
them.
fine.
So, and this is
Right.
a great way to like surf the YD curve, right? Arousal management.
Yes.
So that's why
Excellent
you
point.
saw when, even though it was like the first trial that Contraband was running, you saw every time he came back to find the mama's face, there was no upset. There was no, and he went right back into the ring, like right back into the course, as if it was part of the game, because there's that foundation of find my face. So that you won't have these spikes in arousal as a result of that.
Right. And so I'm looking through the chat, and Marlene said after 4 to 6 obstacles, hers gets the zoomies. I didn't mention that I started agility with Dalmatians. And oh yeah, do I know about zoomies? And so fully agility trained, but freaks out halfway for no reason that you get no operant reason, right? Like he didn't put on his spectacles and say, and now I zoom, right? The dog probably had some type of physiological thing that was brewing like a volcano. Right. And then after 4 to 6 obstacles, when maybe there was a small error, maybe there's no cookies, maybe you're moving further into the course and further from the obvious reinforcement. And then you've got like a physiological explosion, and it manifests as zoomies for yours, for biting for others, for sniffing for others, visiting, could be anything. So the games that I showed you with my 2 little girl dogs, where we teach the dogs to deal with the reinforcement outside of the ring and the pattern of going from the bowl to the ring to the bowl and adding more and more obstacles will definitely help that, right? And find my face, because sometimes when they get zoomies, it's because there's been an error in communication, right? So continuing down through the chat, hello, Jolynn. She says, what about a dog that wants to mark everything on course? Everything must be peed on, including, oh, you peed on the judge. There's a first for everything.
Oh my God, I've never heard
Nice.
that before.
Huzzah.
Well
Do you have
done.
video? Can we have video? That's awesome. Sometimes you just gotta laugh, right?
Right.
Sometimes. So I'm talking about a Papillon peeing on a judge, and
my
Nacho
dog,
comes over. He's like, I could do that. I would totally do that.
my dog pooped on the dog walk, middle of the dog
Yeah.
walk. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
it happens.
Agility is there's a lot of support groups, because sometimes you just gotta like laugh through the horror. I would take the pattern games. Peeing on, like, marking can be an anxiety behavior,
Yeah.
right? So all of these pattern games to help that. And if it's happening at a trial, it is probably going to go back to the power pattern of that I showed you with hot sauce, the anxiety of doing a course without food or toys in the ring, right? Because it's probably a good guess that Zoomer would be fine if there were food or toys there, right? That and find my face, right? Every dog should know find my face in every sport. It's just such a great way to handle anything that could happen, right?
I'll say this about find my face. I've been sharing it with the folks that we've been presenting to around the Resilience Rainbow Tour, and these are mostly people who do behavior work, who are not in doing sports, and they love the game too, because it teaches the dog to default to, if something is stressful or overwhelming or something goes wrong out there, or if they're not, if like internally something feels off, they just default to find my face.
Yeah, love that. Kay wants to know, how do you transfer the value of something like Super Bowls for a dog that runs to people in a trial to the ring at a trial? All of these power patterns work together. So if you think back to Neo the Papillon, in that video that Bobby had, where Melody was just doing like jump stuff, like wing to a jump, and people were walking around. So you have to do that at practice. You have to neutralize the game, neutralize the skill. And then bowls are allowed in the ring at a trial at UKI, right? Thank you, UKI, where you can literally put like an empty food bowl. Ideally in that situation, it wouldn't be a real food bowl. It could be just like a giant target. And you can go in do a thing, and make it more like the remote reinforcement where he does a thing past a person, you run to the bowl, mark, and then run to the next bowl outside the ring. Or if he likes toys, you could whip out a toy. Right. So you just have to be a little creative.
Yeah.
So all of that remote reinforcement, like a lot of these questions are about what do you do at a trial? How do you put this in a trial? And so a lot of our answers are going to be, it's going to be very easy if you've done it in training and practice and folded in all of the distractions that your dog might struggle with.
Yeah, patterns can take you very far. There was a great question. There's a couple of people that were saying that they trial in venues and in locations where you cannot train outside of the ring, right? So my question to them is, how far away do you have to be? Like, can you give your dog treats outside of the ring? Like, or can you tug with them a little bit or give them a toy when you're waiting to go? Is that allowed? Because if that's allowed, then you can do the up and down game, but use your feet as instead of a bowl or instead of a target, you can place a treat on your feet and then go up and down like that while you're waiting to go. So these patterns can be done without objects, right? Without tools or equipment, where you could even do the 1, 2, 3 game back and forth, counting and giving treats or giving a toy. Somebody had asked about a toy. So I do a lot of toy work as well, especially one of my dogs does prefer like a tug. So I'll hold the toy. See if you guys can see me, I'm holding the toy here. And then I'll say 1, 2, 3, and leashes in my hand too. 1, 2, 3, and then tug, 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 tug. I'll ask for an out and then take it and I'm holding it and 1, 2, 3, and then tug, tug, tug out. You know, so there's ways to do that. Or as Tracy was saying, you can go bowl to bowl for the Super Bowls game, but when you get to the bowl, you do a tug or a target, ask for an out. You go to the next bowl, tug, 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 and ask for an out. So there's ways to incorporate all of this. You can use so Leslie McDevitt, she uses like, when she has a couple of different games where she's going back and forth, she'll use a chair. So you could just like work between 2 chairs and you don't even have to have an object of there. Your dog will recognize the pattern. Like if you set up 2 dining room chairs or kitchen chairs in your house and you practice this, and then you have 2 camping chairs and you practice in the yard, or anything, and then you go to a trial, there's 2 chairs, you'll find 2 chairs, to start to move between the 2 chairs. There's so many different ways that you can create a pattern for your dog.
Yeah. And so like, I know in some venues in the US, you have to be 10 feet away. And I think Wendy put in that in Australia, it's 15 feet away, 5 meters, which is more than 15 feet. You can just build up these games really quickly. So like when I was playing the Super Bowl back and forth with the weave poles, I can keep moving the bowls further and further and further till they're like 50 feet away. So that while I'm waiting for my turn, I am playing this 15 feet away or whatever past the legal distances. And this is a future seminar, we bring the dog to the line, bring them up into a more sustained attentional state using different techniques once they're in that selective attentional state. So if you're running a sport where you can't be close to the ring with your cookies and your toys, then you can just easily work all of this back 10, 15 feet away, right? Just by getting it within those sessions, right?
Yeah. Christine asked, will these patterns work to calm a dog that's excited about moving bikes and people? Oh yeah.
Baby.
Just like the example of the video where Tracy was running back and forth with Voodoo, and then the flyball competitor was just on the side with the two little bowls, one on one side, one on the other side, and the dog was between her legs, right? Like, so every time the dog re-engaged, there was another treat. So you can use a lot of, you don't have to have it in like a tight space like that flyball competitor. She did it that way because the idea was to slide into the flyball lane and just go when it was her turn. But you can, I'm a behavior consultant with folks that don't do dog sports. So we use a lot of these games like out in the world. I set up these games like the Super Bowls games at Central Park with one of my clients. And we did this. Come here, buddy. Sorry, buddy. Come here. And we did anything that's a pattern, anything that's predictable helps to make an unpredictable environment, like an urban environment, feel easier to cope with for the dog.
Right. And something that's interesting about patterns is, I know a lot of these videos were short and the patterns were happening quickly. But dogs are brilliant, and the patterns can be really extended. Like you can really gradually extend the amount of duration, and like the time between things happening, and they'll still recognize it as a pattern, right?
Yeah.
Think about things in life that your dogs have figured out really successfully that you do, right? Like my morning routine, they know what the extended pattern is, right? And so it doesn't have to be quick, boom, boom, boom. You can gradually open things up so that you're able to apply it to the dog sport situation.
Yeah. Cool.
And so Ginger asked, what if he misses the weave entry? Bobby said, let them finish, no treat in the bowl. Honestly, I still treat, right?
Okay.
Because if they miss the weave entry, right? They miss
They're
the
still
weave
weaving.
entry, right? They're still weaving, and there could be something else going on. They could be noticing something really hard in the environment. They could be worried about something. They could be dealing with arousal regulation. So I still treat, and then I might either ask for the same challenge, just going the other way, or I will make it easier, right? And so if the dog is already struggling and then I break the pattern, then the dog's going to be like, now what, right? So it sounds crazy, right? But it works like a charm, right? Because we're not working operantly. That made my head hurt to even say that, because I'm a dog trainer. We do things operantly, and I'm like, yeah, they didn't weave, reward them. And you'll have so much better understanding because we're working physiologically. And then if they're failing at what you want, you just make it easier for them to be successful and go from there. And it works really, really quickly.
So there's someone who I think accidentally messaged me directly.
Sure.
Or us directly. It's iPhone. I don't know who that is. So would the 10 tunnel game pattern be able to be used in a trial to increase focus and enthusiasm when they are tired? I don't quite understand the question.
Oh,
do you understand the question?
I think so.
Okay.
So the 10 tunnel game is actually not really a pattern. It's more just a way to physiologically arouse the dog, right? Sometimes when we're teaching the dogs how to function in that high state of arousal, we got to do what we got to do, right? Make them crazy. And there's no better way to get a dog into a higher arousal by having them bark their heads off or run through a tunnel 10 times in a row, right? So it's not really a pattern. It's just designed to get them more stimulated. And it could get them more stimulated into that optimal state of arousal when they're tired, like at the end of a long day or something. But you may not have access to 10 tunnels at a trial. So you want to be able to do things that will get that without needing 10 tunnels, right?
There's also, when they're tired, you also want to consider kind of like, what are you doing for the week? What's happening during the day? Where are you creating the dog during the day? Are they getting decompression times? So there's so much more to that question in terms of how to support them to prevent them from being that tired, where you have to work so hard to get their focus and enthusiasm up. And there is the piece of like the physical endurance and stamina and conditioning, as well as the mental and emotional kind of conditioning to withstand a big, long day like that.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Kathy asked, with the start line Super Bowl game, do you eventually introduce distractions if your dog shuts down, if they see dogs close to the ring? Yes, of course, right? Because we have to, because that's the reality of the sport. And I do you remember when I was doing my Border Whippet Contraband with the cooler, right? So with this start line game, start with a distraction that is neutral, right? Like something that's just there in the environment. Because if you start with something really hard right away, if you skip all the way to the hardest thing, then the Super Bowl game becomes a physiological cue for anxiety, which we do not want. So start with something easy, teach the framework of it, and then you'll be amazed at how quick it is to be able to go to the hard stuff and how easy it is for the dog to recognize the framework of the pattern games and ignore what they're concerned about at a trial, right? Because we're working in these attentional states. Once they know, once we know how to get the brain to shift to that attentional state, it gets easier and easier with rehearsal, right?
So it's 9:30 already in the East Coast, but we have 2 questions. What do you want to do?
Sure. Well, we can answer the 2 questions.
Oh my God, so many questions all of a sudden popped up.
We'll be
I
quick.
would-
We'll be quick.
Yeah, so the
It'll
pattern
be
game,
power rounds.
okay, the pattern game for the table, for a dog that won't get on the table in the ring. Yes, you could absolutely use a pattern game for that. And it's almost like I see the bowl game kind of being really helpful to get on the table. And so I would lower the table and play with this in your away from the agility trial, like at home or in class, or likely at home if possible, or rent a space so there's no other distractions around, and start with a Super Bowls game. And then see if you can weave in the table. I feel like I'm giving you sort of a blanket answer without really seeing your dog and working your dog to tweak it along the way. So whoever Gigi is, I apologize that I can't give you like a more specific, but I would recommend playing around with the Super Bowls game and then incorporate the table on top of it, sort of like the way that Tracy was doing with that dog Sunny to go into the tunnel, because there's lots of reasons why a dog won't get on the table for, so Brandy's question is, I prefer to crate my dog in the car trials. Me too, but sometimes it's not ideal, too hot or weather, missing instructions. So I'd like to work on being able to leave my dog crated in a more exciting environment without barking. How would you use pattern games, which seems to involve a lot of movement, to work on this skill so that the dog is comfortable in the crate, it sounds like. I personally don't see how a power pattern game would work for feeling comfortable in a crate and being able to rest in a crate.
Right.
I wouldn't use a power pattern or a pattern game if you're trying to get your dog to settle in the crate. Now, if you're trying to work on getting your dog to go past other dogs, power patterns totally work. But there's a lot more to just having your dog learn how to settle. You can set up the environment where your dog is crated, and then you can have an additional X pen with blankets sort of covering to block some of the visual. You can have a fan in there to add a little bit of white noise if possible. And then also a lot of, if you do relaxation work and like practice relaxation work with your dog in the crate with the door open, like at home, and you spend a couple weeks doing that, and then you start to take the show on the road and you practice relaxation work by, if you have like a portable crate, a soft crate, and just kind of travel with it and put it into different scenarios. I worked with one of my clients where we were working relaxation, but there's like agility noise on the TV in the background playing loud, where we increase the volume over time. Just there's so many ways that you can work that, and then work it in class, and then work it in seminars before you start to actually use it in a trial environment.
Yeah. There are two more questions, and they're really good questions. So Kate says, do you think the Find My Face game prevents dogs from driving ahead independently? No. And in some ways, sometimes I wish they would drive ahead for me less independently, because they fast, I'm slow. Find My Face is, the dog recognizes it when something has gone wrong, when the information has stopped, right? So if I, like you saw in my video,
and usually we stop.
right, like or sometimes I just run with no information, like I'm just running and the dog is like, I have no idea what you want. And so I've done all the things, and so in those moments the dog, because they process things more slowly so they see the picture more clearly, they're like, there is no information, right? And so if they're frustrated, that's when we get the zooming, the barking, the biting, the sniffing. But if they understand the Find My Face, they have the arousal management to be able to just be like, human, what is it? And if they're close enough to a line, they'll stay on the line. But driving ahead independently is a cued behavior, which involves information. So if the dog understands the skill and I give halfway decent information, doesn't even have to be that good, but halfway decent, they will drive ahead independently. They don't seek out my face when the information is flowing. It's only when the information has been cut off, right? Like your cell phone drops a call and you look at it, you're like, what? Which we all do, right? Because you don't want to throw it to the ground. You don't want to get mad at it. If your cell phone drops a call, we all look at it, right? But if I cue the dog to drive ahead, they will drive ahead. So we've not seen any fallout from Find My Face. That was an excellent question. And from Vicky, so if you have a dog that functionally knows her obstacles in training, and sometimes in a trial but gets so high she becomes a barking maniac at any obstacle, relatable, would you start over with pattern games and not go to trials? Yes, I would. I would stop trialing, because if it's madness at a trial, what's the point? It's no fun for
Yeah.
anyone, and you're building in frustration, right,
Yeah.
Bobby? Like Bobby's worked with a lot of dogs that they've had to kind of untangle the frustration that's been built in by doing that. And what I would do is I would definitely add the power patterns that I showed you, like with hot sauce, where the reinforcement was not on me. I would add that to your training because that might be the source of frustration. And I would add find my face because it's possible that you make a tiny mistake and in a higher state of arousal, she more easily tips over into the frustration, the barking mania. And that's also might be like what I do with the weed pulls. You might get better performance if the dog has the arousal management of putting the obstacles into the power patterns. And then when I do go back to trials, I would do not for competition runs. Like if she likes toys, you can bring toys in, or you could do short little runs to your in and outs where you've got your bowl at the entry and your bowl at the exit, right? In classes at trials. And then when you go back to trials, when the dog understands all that, then you'll have a much, much better time with your runs.
You know what
Right.
I love also about UKI is I only recently learned this, although I think it's been going on for a while. You can put your toy in the basket with your leash. I didn't know that.
Did you know that only New Jersey has baskets? The rest of the country, we just put it on the ground.
Or on the ground, whatever. Or,
I know,
on
I'm
the-
teasing you.
or on a table. My point,
Right.
we're so proper in New Jersey. No, but my point is, like, there's a lot of ways that you can practice these things. It might require you to travel a little bit, or one of my students is like having a friend come over and a couple friends, and they're just doing their own, they're creating that sort of environment by renting a space and creating it with a bunch of friends. So there's so many ways that you guys can practice and build on this.
I just thought of an application for the food dogs in UKI, right? Because UKI has all these training opportunities.
yeah.
You put your last cookie in the bowl,
Yeah.
you go in the ring with a second bowl attached to your leash, like one of those pop-up bowls.
Oh, like
attached
the
to your
water
leash.
ones, like the collapsible
Yes.
ones.
And so your second power bowl is it's in the ring with your leash for all you food hounds. I'm totally going to try that.
We have to experiment.
Yep. And then when the dog is done with the run, you grab the leash, grab the bowl, run out, put a cookie in the bowl. There you go. I'm going to totally try that.
It's such
Legal
a
in UKI.
transfer, like the bowls, it's a transfer of value. Like I
Yeah.
say it's like a promise of a reward, but it's a transfer of value of what is happening. Pretty amazing.
Minnesota has leash buckets too. We've been informed.
Yay!
Minnesota, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. It's two buckets.
Hooray!
Awesome.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you, everybody. Excellent questions. And we definitely encourage you to be creative, right? As you build these up. We will be downloading this, getting all the stuff emailed to you. If you don't have it by Wednesday and you've checked your spam box, message me, email me, and I will send it again because sometimes email eats all of this stuff, right? And then, right, because it happens. And then just, keep us posted like on Facebook. Tell us how it's going. We're always interested to hear how all the dogs respond to all of these different power patterns. All right.
Patterns.
Thank you, everybody. We are going to let you go back to your regularly scheduled Monday. I can't believe it's Monday. Hope to see you all in person, even Wendy in Australia at some point soon. And have a great time with your dogs and your training, everyone.
Thank
Have
you.
a good night.
Good night.
Bye, you guys. Good night, everyone.